Okay, before we begin, I want to welcome Brock Recorder Times' newest reporter, Sabrina. Welcome to the board. Good to have you here. So I'd like to call to order the regular meeting, May the 13th, 2015, public session, and I'm going to ask us to rise for special singing. Very much. I'll ask Director Patterson to do a roll call, please.
Trustee Armour sends regrets. First Vice Chair Karkner.
Present.
Trustee Cram.
Present.
Trustee Garrow.
Present.
Trustee Bill McPherson.
Present.
Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Second Vice Chair McDonald.
Present.
Chair McMillan.
Present.
Trustee Richards. Present. Trustee Swan.
Present.
Student Trustee Shayla Cruz. She's in the building.
She'll be here. Yeah. Thank you very much. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 3.02, 3.03, May the 13th, 2015. Trustee Richards, Trustee Karkner, cast your votes, please.
I'm still trying to log on.
All in favor? Thank you very much. Are there any conflict of interest? And there are none. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board move into Committee of the Whole for discussion on agenda items 5.02 to 6.01, May 13th. Moved by Trustee Garrow, seconded by Trustee Cram. Cast your votes, please. And just a show of hands, Scott. Thank you very much. Moving forward, tonight we're having one school success plan presentation, and after tonight we're not going to have any more until September. Reason for that is the board has a lot of work to do, and we just felt it would be best, in fairness to our schools and in fairness to the board, to give the time to conduct the business that we have ahead of us. That being said, we do have one school presentation. It's going to be Wolford Public School, and I'm going to ask Superintendent Coombs to introduce the principal and vice principal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome Wolford Public Schools Vice Principal Brad O'Neill forward. Now, Wolford is twinned with Merrickville Public School. It's a little bit confusing. Merrickville Public School, of course, is in the Grenville family of schools, and Wolford is in the Smith Falls family of schools. So we're still working that out, but I would like to also welcome Principal Jane Bain, who's here from Merrickville. Thank you, Jane, for coming tonight. And I'd like to offer Brad. Now, if you're on your way between Merrickville, if you've never been to Wolford, if you're driving between Merrickville and Jasper, and if you know where that is, you probably have seen Wolford School on the south side of the highway. It's a little jewel tucked away in the country. And I'd like to now ask Vice Principal O'Neill to come forward and tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, am I on there?
I believe so.
Yep, we're good. Thank you, Superintendent Coombs. It is my pleasure and privilege to be able to come and speak to you this evening about Wolford Public School. It is exciting to share what is happening at our small rural school. As Superintendent Coombs said, just west of Jasper, between Smith Falls and Merrickville. We're part of the Rideau family of schools, a K-8 school, offering core French programming, and our school population is just over 100 students with 12 staff. As you will come to realize after the presentation, we are the small school with a big heart, and I'm very proud to briefly share our story with you tonight. Our shared school mission and vision describe our purpose and vision for our students. We emphasize student thinking, problem solving, inquiry-based approach, and critical thinking in all the subject areas. We consider everything at Wolford to be about learning. Teachers actively seeking out ways to help students make meaningful connections and make learning relevant for our kids. Our vision promotes higher ordered thinking through open-ended questions, critical literacy, research, and relevant and authentic learning experiences. So we'll look at some data. EQAO data can be easily skewed sometimes by outliers when average is used with such a small cohort in small schools. Average may not always be the best measurement of central tendency of the data when the sample size is very small. One way to consider data is to look at trends and composite data over time to give us a clearer picture of student achievement. Our EQO data suggests positive trends in reading, writing, and mathematics over time. This slide presents some of that composite data. 2 3-year composites, as well as a 5-year composite. To note, primary writing is a real strength over time. Positive trend in reading is good, and junior math over time continues to be above the provincial average. When we look at the 2014 data from last year, we see an outlier in red. There's real reasons behind that outlier. It's a very small cohort. In fact, there were only 9 students that wrote the test last year. 1 student was exempt and did not even write the test. And we had, meaning that there was 44%, which means that's 4 out of 9 kids that met the standard. 2 out of 9 met the standard or did not meet the standard. Half the students were at level 3 and the other half were at level 2. So the trend over time, as you saw on the last slide, was better. So those students that did not meet the standard, as I said, were at a level 2. We do have plans and support for those students who did not meet those standards through guided reading and math, our Empower Reading program, extra support through EA time and extra help with teachers, and through differentiated instruction. If we look at the grade 6 data, again, a very small cohort. 7 students wrote the test last year. We know who these students are. The results suggest that we are still above the province in reading and math. And again, those students not successful, at a level 2. 100% of our students, to note, met the standard in reading in grade 6, so all of them. 71% of our students which met the standard in writing, and that's 5 out of 7 students. And 57% of students met the math achievement, which is 4 out of 7 students. If we look at the grade 3 to grade 6 cohort tracking, again, we're looking at 7 students in that cohort. So when you look at this particular slide, 14% represents 1 kid. 29% represents 2 kids. Okay, just to kind of fill you in on that. And again, those 2 kids did not meet the standard. These kids did improve, and they are at level 2, and they continue to be accommodated as we speak with some guided math in their grade 7 program. Our special education achievement, level 3 or 4 for 2014. Again, 7 students, all of our special ed students met the standard. This is a trend where kids have achieved well at Wolford Public School above the provincial standard with that group. Okay, getting to the alignment of the critical success factors of CREW. As you can see, we communicate with parents and community in a variety of ways. A few highlights. Our Facebook page and web page are used frequently. Our Facebook page in particular, with 100 students, probably about 75 families, we're looking at about 280, I think it was up to 282 hits or likes as of today. We have an active school council and parent community who have confidence in the school and are supportive of our new initiatives moving forward. With resources, Wolford has engaging learning spaces supported by our resources. For example, we have a use of technology to enhance and mediate instruction and teaching for learning. 2 sets of iPads, classroom computers, and laptops. Students have daily access to technology. All students have that. And smartboard technology is present in every classroom. Under educational programs, you'll notice in terms of the supported PD for teachers, we have a variety of board-supported PD as well as some in-school professional development. So I consider that to be the best of both worlds. Again, under educational programs, I would like to highlight our strong programming in the arts. We have a guitar program that's still going strong for all students in grade 5 to 8. And it's supported by a music instructor who works with classes every week for 1 hour per class. It's been sustainable. I'm now in my 6th year at the school, and we're building capacity with classroom teachers, where I now have 2 out of those 3 teachers have learned to play the guitar and work with the students during that instruction time. We also have a music specialist who is teaching our kindergarten program at present, and she supplements the music, the ORF instruments, the vocal music, and visual arts and drama within the school, and works very, very collaborative with all classroom teachers within the school. Our full-day kindergarten, we're in the 2nd year of our full-day kindergarten program. It is an exciting place to be. As Superintendent Coombs said, if you were driving by the school, if you did that today, you would see all kinds of ribbons decorating the trees and the fences today, because the kindergartens wanted to decorate today. And we've just had 4 miniature picnic tables that the grade 7-8 students have assembled and put together for the kids so they can actually paint those. So there's always something exciting and interesting happening down at the kindergarten for sure. Student leadership, I wanted to put this up. The pictures up here sort of show some of the things that are happening. It's a big part of our culture is the collaboration amongst students. whether it be reading buddies, math buddies, computer buddies, or cross-grade teams for bridge building, athletic days, special science Olympics. Older students are continually working with younger students. It's a huge benefit for everyone. We take care of one another at Wolford. In addition to the events above here under wellness, which is our fourth critical success factor, there's a strong desire to do whatever we need to do for kids. This often demands positive communication and very healthy relationships with kids and their families. Our staff continually listen and build up positive currency in that emotional bank account with kids in the school community. This relationship that gets built is essential, especially in a small school. Our staff takes an interest in the lives of all of our students, and their knowledge of each learner is of great benefit to the teaching for learning. We have a caring culture and a dedicated staff who have high expectations for all students and an unwavering passion to motivate, to inspire, and to do what it takes to have students achieve at their very best every day. So how does that tie into our school success planning? So sort of a view to improvement. We have 3 school success plan goals, which are listed up here. Our first is moving kids forward in math. Our second is professional development of staff. And our third is school culture. Goal number 1, there's lots of tactics listed there, lots of things that we do. We continue to study, to explore, and develop these strategies that will improve student learning. Measures of success, we're looking at EQO for next year as sort of a lagging indicator. Increased number of students increasing in numeracy for that first goal. For our second goal, which is looking at professional learning, again, doing lots of things within the school. I've highlighted 2 in yellow out there that I just want to speak with too quickly. Pairs of teachers involved in what I call collaborative teaching time throughout the year, and bi-weekly divisional PLCs to focus on numeracy and collaborative inquiry in mathematical learning. My grandmother used to always say, learn something new every day. We continue to learn our way towards high performance and high effectiveness with our eagerness to learn and to find a better way. Staff members are involved in the junior math study that I know has been spoken about at the table in other presentations to determine most effective teaching approaches. Co-teaching sessions in which another teacher joins the main teacher in the classroom allows for pairs of teachers to observe students as they learn and work on strategies together to help students. This has allowed for the expansion of the work of the junior math study to scale within the school, so sharing amongst other classrooms. Again, measures of success for this particular goal: classroom observations, effective use of those open-ended type questions, and increased teacher efficacy in the teaching and the understanding of the concepts around mathematics, and an increase in student voice and quality of questions, so that student-centered, those creation of those student-centered learning spaces for the kids where their voice is really honored. And finally, our third goal, which speaks to school culture. I have alluded to this and discussed it previously, but there are many things that we are still trying to do. Some examples are there, and we're continuing to do these things to maintain the positive school culture that we've worked so hard to gain at Wolford. Again, measures of success, some of the things that we use, some of the tools that we use, it all comes down to allowing various sources to give us feedback, and then to look at that feedback and to act on that feedback. Students in action. Sometimes pictures are 1,000 words. Safe, learning, and fun. some positive feedback from some of our junior students from the junior voice survey that we did this year. And that brings me to the school effectiveness framework. Under student engagement, there's an indicator 3.4 that speaks about students demonstrating a wide variety of transferable skills, such as teamwork, so working together, advocacy, leadership, and global citizenship. And what's really interesting, when I looked at this indicator, it just came together for me when I saw what the kids did this year with their reel-to-reel festival. And I just want to tell the story about that just very briefly. Students actually wrote their own music. They played their own music. They took the theme around water. They took the theme around Ryan's Well. The grade 1-2s ran a whole fundraising campaign around Ryan's Well. The whole school came together and we had a wonderful art celebration around that, with every kid being included in some way. We did watercolor paintings with the kids. Some kids had never done watercolor paintings before. Every student did a watercolor painting, and every kid was part of that exposition that we had, or exhibition there of the art. And the parents would come in and, of course, trick their parents into buying their art. And then, of course, it went to a good cause, which was Ryan's Well. So if you want to, I have a very short, very, very mini clip. You can actually hear the kids in action. So Lisa, if you could.
It's a long way to the water. It's a long way to go. And some days I walk for hours. It's the only way I know. I am just a kid on the other side of the world. I'm just trying to survive.
That's the clip.
I'm just getting into it.
So anyway, I'll just leave you to soak that in for a minute. It did bring a tear to my eye when I heard it, when it was finally finished. And if you could just imagine all of your kids in the school just breaking out into song, like they all know this song, and all of them sing it. And it goes on for probably about 2 weeks, and it's in their mind. The parents say, oh yeah, they've been coming home and we've been hearing this song for 2 weeks. Are we going to do something different now? But it was a very, very, very rich and vibrant experience for everybody involved, staff, students, and community alike. So it brings me to next steps and our strengths. So a view to sort of where we're going next. This is what we believe our strengths are within our school. And some of them I've mentioned, some of them you can infer by some of the things I've talked about or shown here. And I know you have this in front of you. Our next steps moving forward. We're really looking at three things. There's 3 bullets. And I know you can't see the bullets on the slide, but it's the literacy and numeracy plan. It's the zones of regulation, which is a way of looking at tying behavior to emotions. And that's something that we've trained our whole staff in, and we're trying to work that through our classes on a daily basis. So we have a common language to share with kids and parents and teachers about expected and unexpected behaviors that come up based on how they're feeling at a particular time. And then our third bullet was the assessment and evaluation, so that assessment for, of, and as learning. So overall for us, focus on that improvement of reading, writing, and math, definitely there. Definitely a need for improvement in math, but we also are beginning to really dig deep into the data as well, and to be specific about what do we really need to do in literacy, what do we really need to do in mathematics. So thank you very much. We are the small school with a big heart. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have comments or questions? I'll start with anyone on the phone lines. Anyone on the phone lines, a comment or a question?
I'm good. Thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you. Trustee Richards?
Thank you for the presentation. It is a wonderful school. As you said, it's a jewel there on the highway as you're going from Eastern Corners to Merrickville. And the community, the community has a big heart too, and the parents. Thank you for the presentation. I just had a question. Is there, because you're in the Smith Falls family of schools and your principal is in the Grenville and your superintendent's in the Grenville, does that cause any challenges?
Through you, Chair. In the past, no, not really. I'm very comfortable to pick up the phone and either call Susan or call David around some of these issues. Jane and I speak every day. We're in very close communication, and we do cooperate and have each other's ears on some of the things that are happening in both schools. But no, it hasn't been an issue, and as I said, I've been there. This is my 6th year now, and there has not really been any issues with communication or that sort of thing.
Can I have a follow-up?
Sure can.
The grade 8 students, do all of them go to the Smith Falls family of schools, or some on the outside boundaries? Do they go to the North Grenville?
Yeah, so through you, Chair. Generally, most of our students will go to Smith Falls Collegiate. We're a feeder school for them. However, we do have some grandfathered kids who do go to Athens. So once in a while, we'll get 1 or 2 kids that will go that way. We also have several students, depending on the year, who will go to North Grenville as well, depending on where they live. And depending on where their parents went, sometimes that's the reason for their choice. So thank you for the question.
Any other comments? Trustee McDonald?
Thank you. On your goals, you have, I like the way you've presented them. Certainly give us the measures and the tactics. What's the timeline associated to them?
Through you, Chair. Yes, these are pretty big goals for us. The literacy and numeracy goals, I think, will be much more clear when we get into our SIPSA planning, which is our school improvement plan for student achievement. I think that those goals in terms of literacy and the math will have some defined benchmarks along the way as we go along. Again, they've been things that have been on the docket for a while. But we are seeing some improvement with our students. And again, it's difficult to say when you have such a small cohort what your impact really is. And what I mean by that is if you have 2 or 3 kids that you're trying to move, sometimes that's more difficult than moving more. Sometimes it's easier, all right, depending on the situation. I don't know if I answered your question through you, Chair.
I was hoping.
Yeah, not completely, but I can appreciate where you're coming from. And to your comment about SIPSA, you talked about your next steps moving forward. How did you gather the evidence to be able to support your next steps? What was the process that you used to be able to determine that these are your next steps?
Through you, Chair. We did have a preliminary review of our data, and we uncovered some information that although we received good scores in writing, in the use of conventions, some of our grade 3s and 6s need to improve in developing things like developing ideas and organizing their writing. So we've started, and again, this is just a preliminary review. We're starting to see some of those things. Consistent with our vision as well, our results show that students need to develop those critical thinking skills in reading, such as making inferences. That's loud and clear from the data, from the EQO data as well, and using evidence from the text to their daily lives to support their learning. In terms of the math piece, we're finding that we feel that there's almost our classroom observations and some of the data that we're seeing is we're finding that maybe some further emphasis on word study specifically or vocabulary building in all the subject areas will give our students a better understanding, comprehension of explaining their thinking in their subject areas. Because what we're finding is it's not just sometimes about the math, it's about the communication of the math. So one of the things that would probably be here, and I did mention the numeracy on here, the math here, is we're looking at possibly some explicit teaching of the process skills in math, okay, balanced with an inquiry approach. So it's not one or the other. I think to say one or the other may be the wrong question to ask. It may be a combination of the two things in concert that may be just what the doctor ordered. So we are digging in to answer your question through you, Chair, again. I hope I answered that question, but we are still looking at data. We're still looking at our kids. We're still looking at needs, and those goals will adjust if they need to be adjusted.
Trustee Carter and then Trustee Carlson.
Through you, Chair, thank you for your presentation. It sounds like it's a real family-oriented school. I'm curious, though, with the number of students you have, what are the grade setups? Have you got dual grades or triple grades, or?
Through you, Chair. We've been very fortunate since I've been there. We are still in a situation where we have double grades. So presently we have a grade 1-2, we have a 3-4, we have a 5-6, and we have a 7-8 in the school.
Thank you.
Trustee McAllister.
Brad, congratulations on your on the reel-to-reel clip. The student production process in that whole reel is fascinating. I have a question, two questions. One with regard to school council under communication. How active is your school council? And under goal number 3, your first measure of success was the number of student incidents of antisocial and inappropriate behavior in the classroom, yard, and school. Do you have a sense of how that is going? Is it trending downward at this point or not?
Okay, so through you, Chair. So the first question, you'll have to remind me here again. So the first question was about school council. So our active school council, we had a very active school council up until last year. Some parents moved on. And this year we have a young council, but a very enthusiastic council, and they've done a wonderful job. They've been very, very supportive in trying to look at some of the activities that we have. They bring money into the school through sponsorship of local businesses, and that's something we started several years ago, and it's been very good. They're also very good to step up if help is required at the school. So in an arts night or a school council night, they'll definitely be there to help out with open arms. So we are growing, and they're enthusiastic, and they're a great bunch. We have a lot of fun, and everything is focused on the kids. To speak to your second question, again, remind me, through you, Chair.
Was with regard to the measures of success and behavior.
Yeah, so antisocial behavior. So part of what we're seeing is, again, it's a small school. We know our students well. We know what each student needs because we are so small. And do we have issues? Yeah, we have issues. All schools, like any other school in the province, we would have issues with kids making inappropriate choices. But as I said, everything is about learning. Everything is about educating these kids. There are sometimes consequences that come with that, but we really take a proactive approach and a real relationship approach with kids to have them really understand what's really happening. And that's part of the reason why, through you, Chair, that we're looking at the zones of regulation for next year, where we can have a common playing field in terms of language with these kids to understand their emotions, to understand their behavior, and how the two kind of fit together. I've seen great things since I've been at the school. So I would say, yeah, to answer your question through you, Chair, again, is that I would say the trend is going downward in terms of some of the major incidents that we may have seen 5 years ago.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Cram?
Thank you, Chair. Brad and Jane, I think both of you need to be congratulated because I know twinning of schools is not an easy task. In my past life, I was involved with twinning of schools, and I know how difficult it is. So both of you, well done. I'm very impressed with the presentation. It was very succinct, and the honesty in the report with the goals and the next step forward. I really appreciate it. What I'm really curious about is how you keep your 7 and 8s happy in a very small school.
Through you, Chair.
Really?
Difficult to speak for the grade 7 and 8s, but if I was to hazard a guess, it would probably be because they have always gone through the same thing that they're experiencing now. They look forward to the leadership that happens within the school. There are all kinds of things that we do for them to make them feel special. In terms of, design and tech is an example where we have the kids do that in grade 7 and 8, and that's something that none of the other school kids in the school do. So they get on the bus and they run over to Chimo and they do some design and tech work and they come back. We also do understand that they do need a break from once in a while too, because they do a lot. There's lots of leadership that happens. They just really enjoy being at school. I don't know how else I can say it. They just love being there. They like each other. They really love the fact that they're treated as in a very humanistic way. People do take an interest in their lives. They want to know, how did you do in that hockey game on the weekend? Or they really, really respond to that. And I think it makes, I don't know if I speak for myself, I think it makes me going to work that much more rewarding because I can see their enthusiasm and excitement in wanting to share something with me or share something with each other. And they're not shut down. We can talk about those things. So if they bring something forward, their voice is there. That's something that happens. To give an example, again, through you, Chair, our grade 7-8 teacher, I can't say enough good things about Mrs. Barr, Christy Barr. She is a master in terms of looking at what's happening outside of school and bringing it inside of school. And they don't think they're learning the curriculum, but they are. So it's very, very rich, some of the things that we do. And again, to give you an example of that, when we did the whole Reel to Reel festival, one of the things she did is she went right to the geography curriculum and she said, well, I can tie this into water. And we can talk about water. We can tie that to all the expectations and the inquiry within the social studies and geography curriculum, and let's do that. And the kids spent time, looking at Ryan's Well, looking at, some of the countries and how water usage, water waste, wonderful things. And again, those were things that kids brought to school to be discussed, and they weren't shut down. So I think that's part of the reason, through you, Chair. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Through you, Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee Swan.
I just wanted to ask, with the 7 and 8s in the elementary school, do you think it's affecting them from the past ones that have left in the last couple of years, going to the high schools and forming peer relationships because they're just with that group of peers, but that group of peers that they're with now is, from what you said, splitting into possibly 3 separate high schools?
Through you, Chair. I think given that a majority of our kids do go to Smith Falls High School, I know that, again, some preliminary look at the data, our Wolford kids tend to do quite well when they go to SF in terms of credit accumulation and that sort of thing. In terms of going to the other schools, I have to say that both North Grenville and Athens have done wonderful jobs in terms of their link crew programs, in terms of some of the transitioning of the kids that we've sent to those schools, and our staff has done a great job with that. So I have not really seen or heard of any negative effect. Through you, Chair, thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Any others? Well, Jane and Brad, thank you so much. Brad, I can tell that you're so proud of your school, and I'm sure that pride spills over to everyone in the Wolford community. So thank you so much for the presentation. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit programming and funding update as part of the performance-based budgeting. And I'm going to ask Superintendent Susan Edwards to introduce some of our members of this team.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. It's my privilege right now to introduce some people and ask them actually to come to the table to help with the presentation. I'd like to introduce Bill Montgomery, and ask Bill. Bill is a program teacher with us in the program department. And I'd also like to ask Renee Burgette to come to the table. Renee is the controller of finance for TR Leger, as well as he manages the FNMI grants and budgets. And here comes Gail Brandt-Terry. She's teaching a special education course across next door. And Gail Brandt-Terry is not a stranger to this table. Gail Brandt-Terry is principal of Naismith School. So thank you very much for joining us and for joining for the presentation tonight. And I just want to begin, actually, I want to thank Trustee Garrow for that special version of O Canada tonight, that to begin with Mohawk, English and French. And I'd also like to introduce Gail. Gail is also a proud member of the Mohawk of the Bay of Quinte and Tyendinaga territory, and learning every day. And Bill, I always know that he was from Haida on the west coast, but I also have learned that when you ever introduce a west coast native person, that you should first introduce them with both their Christian names as well as their spirit names, tell what nation they're from, and what moiety, in the case of the Northwest clan, Coast Nations, where Bill is from, and what clan and territory. So I'm going to, Bill, he is Haida, and his Haida names are Yolthon Schooljuice, Yolthonis. He is Haida, Raven from Yoklanas clan, Dottis from Haida Gwaii, which is formerly from the Queen Charlotte. So this is a team tonight. So to begin, I also would just like to acknowledge the places of where we work, learn, and play in Upper Canada, in the map behind you. We're the traditional territories of the Mohawk, Algonquin, and Cree. And to start the FNMI, First Nation Métis budget presentation, I would like to draw your eyes to the ministry document with the Framework and Implementation Plan, which was revised in 2014. This framework outlines approaches for schools and school boards, which will boost Aboriginal student achievement, help to close the achievement gap, and increase public confidence in publicly funded education. FNMI students, our First Nation and Métis and Inuit students, are in the achievement gap. They are more likely to drop out of school than any other identifiable group. This recently revised framework, which was first produced in 2009 and revised in 2014, is a framework which aims to help school boards close or reconcile the achievement gap between FNMI students and non-First Nation Métis Inuit students. And the board's action plan, our own board action plan, aligns to these objectives, and we meet with the ministry twice a year, at least twice a year, to go over our board plan. Because of this achievement gap, the ministry also supplements and supports financially the First Nation Métis Inuit programming. And this is done in two ways. The first way it's done is through the enrollment-based funding, which is added, so it's the enrollment of both our elementary and our secondary students, and there's also applied to the formula is an Aboriginal index factor. So you can see that the GSN funding has remained relatively consistent over the past few years, and if you take a look to 2009, 2010 to the following year, it close to doubled, and that's because Stats Canada updated their data, and since that time it's remained consistent across. The second way of funding is for the supplementary funding for the FNMI programming is through our Native Studies courses, not courses but credit attainment. Over the past few years, we have consistently increased the number of credits our students have achieved in our First Nation, Métis and Inuit courses by about 10%. And to be truly honest, I need to give credit really to Romaine Mitchell, who's now with the Ministry of Program Teacher, and to my previous superintendents, who really undertook this quite early in the game on a provincial level. And you can see that right from the beginning there, if you assume that a student takes one Native Study credit a year, you can see that we started with about 86 or 89 credits at the beginning. My eyesight's failing, can't quite see. To about 1,500 credits. So we have about 1,500 students this past year that will receive a credit, are on track to receive a credit for taking a course in First Nation, Métis, or Inuit. So this, on the credit attainment piece, so projecting for the year 15-16 for next year, we are projecting that our students will achieve 1,526 credits. And so the ministry financially supplements this credit attainment. The courses that they are really focusing in on for the FNMI supplement are the art, Aboriginal voices, history, and integrated arts. And these courses range from grade 9 courses to grade 12 courses. The professional learning and the resources that are required for the courses are really required that we ensure that we get our professional learning, our professional development, and our resources that align so they respect the unique knowledge, understanding, and language of First Nation, Métis, and Inuit. And they respect our students, and both our staff receive cultural experiences to enhance this. So a combination of our enrollment funding plus the credit attainment gives our total First Nation revenue is a combination of these two. And as you can see by this graph, it too has gone up by about 10% each year. So projecting for next year to approximately $2,400,000. We also have a tuition agreement with the Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education. And although the tuition pieces for this agreement are not related to the FNMI program right now, the relationship part, the nurturing of the relationship and the relationship part in terms of assuring student achievement and student success clearly are. And here on this graph here, this shows the number of students each year from 2009. And so what this agreement really, what the AMBI agreement really represents is our combined commitment to work together to develop appropriate and meaningful programs in order for our students, our students from Akwesasne, to achieve success. So on the expense side, our expenses go to support the programming, and they're expressed in this table here. So the first line goes to our salaries for the FNM courses. Our FTE for teachers are approximately 15 teachers, along with our program resource teacher. Projected for next year as well, we've included, because of the growth of the program, Laurie Taylor, our vice principal, on that line, as well as an IA, our IAs for the TR Leger and Foundation program in Cornwall. Professional development, to ensure culturally relevant professional development for our teachers and for our staff. Our classroom supplies, you can see that part is doubled because we do supply the resources for our classrooms, and we really work to the ministry guidelines really encourage us to get the traditional materials wherever possible. So, for example, for in the arts, we're bringing them in. We bring leather, we bring the soapstone, we purchase the beading, all the materials for the classes, along with the resources for the novels or the music groups or the various groups coming in. And then we have the facilities with regards to our foundations, as well as renting spaces for professional learning, for a total of expenses of $2,400,000. The true goal, the real goal of our budget is to optimize the conditions which support student learning. And so the next few slides we're going to talk about how we optimize our budget to support student learning. You've seen this mind map before. and it's a student voice mind map for the government, the ministry brought students together for the Achieving Excellence document. And with the medicine wheel in the middle, you see the 4 dimensions, the well-being, equity, excellence, and public confidence that we create our board improvement plan from, and the schools align with their school improvement goals. The significance of the medicine wheel is at the center. Indigenous people talk about the medicine wheel in relation to taking care of 7 generations. And it was interesting the other day at Native Student Leadership, it struck me, because we were sharing this with our students, and it really struck me, it wasn't 7 generations, but our students at Native Student Leadership start coming in grade 7, and they exit in grade 12, so it's spanned about 6 years, but we were talking about generations at that point in time, and it did strike me. And so the well-being agenda, the student well-being agenda that is absolutely key of achieving excellence, and it's absolutely key, I think, also just made me wonder, as we go forward with this, are we thinking about 7 generations we talk about well-being and achievement? The residential school apology was in 2008, 7 years ago, and so the work of healing has truly begun, but it is work of healing through the Truth and Conciliation Commission. And just on that note, too, we have over 50 students and staff that will be attending the Truth and Conciliation Commission Days in June in Ottawa. To support the Achieving Excellence pillars of well-being and excellence, there are a number of provincial First Nation, Métis, and Inuit initiatives that we participate heavily in, and in fact that we're often leaders in. It takes a tremendous amount of partnership and collaboration is absolutely key to the successes of these. The first one is the participation in the implementation and training session for the Ontario curriculum, which is being revised. And I really do have to thank Bill and Gail. OSPA asked us to contribute some feedback, and Gail, they really dug in and took a look at that and provided some very, very good feedback for that. Students participate in ministry-sponsored camps, starting with the Tim Hortons camp that starts off you'll hear more about that a little bit later on. Starts off in September. Throughout the province, we participate in the FNMI leads, teacher and principal leads, for professional development days, as well as superintendent leads. And in fact, we hosted one of those days in March of 2015. I do want to speak for our self-ID program. With our self-ID program, we have the signs up within all of our schools and across our board site. And we have approximately well over 350 First Nation, Métis identified students, self-identified students. And now that we have the identification process in place and we're seeing an increase in our numbers, we're far better equipped to work with our FNMI partners within our communities to improve our practice in bringing evidence in the future to you as trustees. I know that you're really interested in the critical success factors such as EQAO, Tell It For Me data, student staff testimonials, and data and responses, or as well as community responses. Now that we have the data, we're in a position to work with our partners and to grow deeper into understanding what our own data is telling us about our students. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill to talk about building how we build staff capacity.
Through you, Chair. Gusunu Aibang Aiden, Tila Auyagan Chahawa. As Susan has mentioned, we're showing a lot of success through Aboriginal education. And with its growth, it's a challenge to have our staff feeling comfortable with the position. There's not many that actually went to school to be Native Studies teachers. They all want to be science teachers or history teachers or English teachers. So the support that we provide them is quite extensive and continually ongoing and evolving. One thing that we've been concentrating on the last couple of years is our link sessions, which we use a Microsoft Link program, which in real time broadcasts through our participating classrooms, both elementary and secondary, and we provide cultural teachings, authentic cultural teachings to our classrooms. So support that our staff would not generally get access to by having somebody from various cultures, whether it be Mohawk or Haida or what their personal nation is. It's something that we provide as well. These traditions, these speakers and presenters are also available to visit the schools. We ask that they share that experience with other classes and other schools as well. The link sessions are just a taste of what is available to them. We have, through these objectives we're developing quite a core of teachers that are very supportive and take part in a number of our opportunities, such as the Tim Hortons camp that Susan referred to, and learning from our elders, which is provided by FNMI EO, which is First Nations Métis Inuit Educators of Ontario, and the ministry leads meetings as well. We have teachers that are invited and contribute to that quite often. The Native student leadership, we're getting more support. We've asked teachers originally, even a few years ago, we're fortunate to get 20 to 30 students involved at the most. This year, our lowest numbers, we're looking at 80, which we have 4 sessions throughout the school year, 2-day sessions on Tuesday and Wednesday generally. And right now, ongoing, I just left and I'll be returning later. We have our final end of the year retreat, which is right now the kids they just finished building and participating in Sweat Lodge. They're skinning a caribou hide. They've plucked and are cooking and eating a Canada goose. They'll be basket making, doing a medicine walk, and I'm sure all skinning and smoking and eating some sturgeon. So all cultural teachings from elders from around the area that we bring to our students, and they gladly take part in. Those experiences are all well received, and as Susan mentioned again, the final item there is we have our students as well going to the Truth and Reconciliation final report on June 1st in Ottawa. Student well-being is the next slide. That we mentioned there is the top of that list is the Native student leadership. As Susan mentioned again, grades 7 through to 12. Also, last week we have such a large group this year, and we're limited to the accommodations that are available. And if I didn't mention, it's taking place at Thompson Island, just past Cornwall. It's part of the Akwesasne territory. So we have 15 students there now. Last week, that's grades 11s and 12s. Last week we took 20 students to London, Ontario for Inspire, which is a youth conference, which was sponsored by Imperial Oil, and there's also Health Canada, the military, and obviously some post-secondary education. It was very successful. A lot of students came back with, and the reason we split it up that way, I should say before I mention that, is that with our numbers, we decided the 9-10s, it's early enough that they can make career choices and still change their timetables in their schools to guide them towards that. So we had several students that did figure out what they wanted to do, and have it narrowed down at least, and are starting to plan their courses for that. Unfortunately, Inspire is only in the area every couple of years. Next year they're going to be in Vancouver, so it's unlikely that we'll be able to go there. 2 years ago we were in Montreal. So it's when we have the opportunity, we like them to take advantage of that. The FNMI studies and Mohawk language courses take place in Cornwall. We've also begun our Algonquin language courses in Perth, which is for families. We do have students that attend with their family members, but the idea there is to make the parents themselves feel comfortable with their language, so that when their children begin to take it, that they can help and feel comfortable in helping them at home as well. We've had various groups. The at full sponsored Rosny Theatre production called Spirit Horse, which originally was a Scottish play, which was transformed into is very similar to a First Nations folklore story. So that was brought to 5 of our schools, and they were able to do that. And we had some professional development for our teachers, so that they're able to take that the teachings and the themes from the play and relate them to what's referred to in the ministry documents as a scope and sequence. And all grade levels, teachers are to input native content into the curriculum in all subject areas. So that's a benefit for our teachers to be able to be aware of that as well and get PD for that. And Young Imaginations was a theatrical group from Tyndonega and Belleville, which came, students themselves, and came to visit 5 of our schools as well and do a theatrical production for our students there and do a little bit of PD and for our teachers as well. The AMBI agreement obviously is key to our anything that we do. The See My Voice opportunity that they came and had a question and surveyed our students of how well they were feeling. And it was a surprising reaction of how the students were feeling quite comfortable and with the administration and how they're feeling within their schools by participating in these events. The Kelsey Shires, our native student trustee on the school's Senate, we were granted a position for our FNMI students to have a representative there as well. We're just completing our second year. What we asked the students to do at our native student leadership is to select one member, a grade 11 student. If it was grade 12, then unless they're doing their victory lap, they probably wouldn't join us again the following year. So we select a grade 11 student to represent our group and the student senate, and they represent the following year. They're mentored by the current representative for the last 2 meetings of the senate, and begin the following year themselves. We're always the last sections again relating to the presenters and the elders that we have visit our schools and the relationship that they build and develop with the community there. So.
So what we're trying to do is build those cultural connections and the cultural pride within our students, within our schools. And we want to grow the cultural connections, and we want it to be embedded within the culture. We don't want it to be the one-off events that are happening. So as Bill said, we have the Thompson Island Camp going on, the sweat lodges. At the beginning of all of our Native Leadership days, the day begins with the Thanksgiving opening address as well as a smudging. And smudging is the burning of a sacred medicine. It's often sage or sweetgrass. And it's used to relax and purify the mind, the physical body, and the spirit. And when we asked our students to tell us what makes them keep wanting to come back to student Native leadership, one child said, the smudging is very spiritual to me. So we know that is making those students feel connected. Again, we have the language courses, the participation in the Truth and Reconciliation Day, and I'm quite excited because I'm going to be taking a group of elementary students to participate in the day as well. We've had a variety of family feasts throughout the board and a round dance, and again, the Native Student Leadership has been going on for the last 7 years now, and they get together 4 times a year. And it really is important to the students that it continues, and they're really embracing of the new students as they move into it as well. We want to keep building the having the elders coming into our schools so that they are a part of our school environments. It's building the relationships and the trust with our kids and with our families that is most important. So as a member of the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte, my children grew up and they went to school at Quinte Mohawk School. And before I'm a principal or a teacher, I'm a mom, and I always want to treat my kids the way I wanted my own kids to be treated. And so when my children left Quinte Mohawk School and moved into Moira Secondary with the Hastings and Prince Edward Board, the history that I wished that my children's teachers and their principals knew was that they knew about my kids' culture. They knew about the history, they knew about the language. I wanted them to know that my children were very proud Mohawks, that they learned the Mohawk language in school, and that they were Mohawk dancers, proud of their culture and active in their culture, and that they continue to be active in their culture, their language, their beliefs, and their traditions. I wanted them to know that Indigenous people had their own education system which transmitted the beliefs and the values and the knowledge that was needed for all generations. And after contact, the Canadian government used the formal education system as a means of assimilating and oppressing Indigenous people. I wanted them to know that over a period of 130 years, thousands of First Nation, Métis, and Inuit children from across Canada were sent to Indian residential schools funded by the Government of Canada and run by churches. That the children were taken from their parents and their communities, often forcibly, in order to be stripped of their family ties, their language, their cultural identity, and their traditions. The last residential school closed in 1996, and not even one generation has been removed from this trauma. And that's why a lot of our families and students feel a disconnect and a mistrust of the educational system. Because when you don't feel your culture, your identity, and your family values are heard or represented or recognized, or you don't see yourself in your school, you don't feel like you belong, you don't feel safe, and you're not engaged, and you don't grow. So building that trust in the relationships of our students and our families will help our kids to want to self-identify. And that's achieved through caring and taking a personal interest in them, learning about their community and the nations that the students identify themselves with, asking questions about their culture, the traditions, and the language. Historically, when FNMI people self-identified, it could result in having your children forced to attend a residential school taken from you. So you can understand why there is a reluctance to share and to trust. So we are trying to build that sense of trust by having the family feast that all of our families are invited to come to, by holding the round dance, by offering the opportunity for our families to learn the language. I believe when the Algonquin language lab began, she had people as young as 6 and as old as 70 that are attending her classes, and that is really, really exciting. We've revamped our board communication strategy, and we have the self-identification program, and it's included on our kindergarten registration form. And I was really excited to learn this year in our Welcome to Kindergarten bags, our kids go away with a variety of activities to do at home. And within the book, there was a title called The Bear, and it was based on First Nations culture. So that was really exciting to see that was happening. We also have an email list to stay connected with our FNMI families so that they know when all the events are coming up. And Bill always makes sure that as administrators, he sends out, says, please make sure this letter gets sent home to all of our FNMI families. And if you don't know who the children are in your school, just let me know. So there's a really good communication that is going out to make our families feel involved and to feel included. So we've been asking our kids a whole lot of questions around what is it that makes you want to keep coming back? What are you proud of? Why is Native student leadership important to you? One of the kids that I got a chance to speak with said to me, I used to skip all the time, but I don't skip anymore because I want to be able to come here. The kids are saying that the people at Native Student Leadership are my family. One student said, I've never felt a part of a community before. This is a really new experience to me, and I really, really like it. We hear things like, I feel a responsibility to be here. And every time I come back to Native Leadership, it feels like a family reunion, and I feel like I belong. So what we now want to do with the data is we want to bring members of the First Nation, Inuit, and Métis community together so we can look at our data, look at our EQAO, look at the Tell Them From Me surveys, look at it through an asset-based lens of what are we doing really well and what do we need to improve on so that these kids can achieve their dreams. For some of our kids, they're the first people in their family to be graduating from high school. And for some other students, they're the first students in their families to be attending post-secondary education. And that is exciting to me that we can be a part of making their dreams come true.
So if those voices that Gail has said has not wowed you and touched your hearts within that, some of these next pieces too will just add to that. This here is within Achieving Excellence and talks about the students imagine the future. And at our student Native leadership, at our Native leadership, which Director Patterson was also there, these voices through here, the individualized learning, the personalized learning, the excitement, the safe spaces, the welcoming, the inviting, these very much mirror the voices that we were hearing. The students, they talked about the significance of the feelings of schools and school offices and classrooms, the significance of feeling of welcoming when the schools providing welcoming and culturally sensitive environments for themselves, not only for themselves, but for their parents and for their younger children to come into, as well as for other family members. Most telling was their voices asking for interest-based courses and project-based learning. What we heard from our FNMI students repeatedly over, and we were able to bring information back for them, with them, is discussed in this policy framework. And what it does is it cites in the policy framework that I referenced at the very beginning, and the importance of bringing these interest-based courses to them. It cites the auditor's general reporting that boredom as the principal cause for FNMI students abandoning school. And we certainly heard that as when we were there of wanting to. They talked about interest-based or project-based or some other courses other than their core courses as being so important to them. So as we look to the future for the First Nation, Métis, Inuit programming and taking a look to the future in terms of the expenses that we want to be able to support going forward, which address closing the achievement gap and provide the opportunities to grow and further optimize. What we're really looking for are those programs, those culturally relevant programming, culturally sensitive materials within the classrooms, and that student-driven voice. As Gail spoke about, we have the data now. We have over 350 families that are self-ID'd. So to bring our community partners, to bring our students, to bring families, a group together as part of an advisory circle, to be able to look deeper into the data and to help us in terms of shaping what improvement looks like as we go forward and where some of our goals might want to go. Highlighting the authentic resources and the community supports, bringing those in, using collaborative inquiry to foster, bringing our teachers together with a collaborative inquiry to foster culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy and furthering our practices in that way, and to further work on awareness and professionally develop both for our administrators and for our teachers and our support staff to continue on that journey of building awareness. We have absolutely amazing students, and then invite as we go into next year to come and to some of our Native student leadership pieces. And one of this, I'm going to just end on this one from one of our amazing students. They're the leaders of the day, and they look forward to being the leaders when they graduate. And so this is a quote from one of them: "For the world to become a better place, no pollution, no poverty, no fighting, get outside more, on the internet less, on phones and social media less," stuff like that. So I'll end it on that note.
Thank you very much. Do you have any comments or questions? Trustee Garrell and Trustee McAllister.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That was really good. You think of the students that went to residential school, and the numbers are there, the data's there. But what is somewhat misleading too is that we're now getting data on the number of children that were taken away into foster homes. And it's just as many, and it continues because the policies of the Indian Act are still there. And so we lose that, but so we cannot lose sight of that. And on the other side of it, of course, where you have pride in yourself, your community, and your language, your traditions, bringing back the ceremonies is so important. And we see that in Akwesasne, we see that in a lot of other First Nation communities. I know in BC and where they have self-government agreements like Seashelt and West Bank and other areas, you'll see the achievements that go right on because they're making decisions. They look education right as the forefront. That's the main priority for all learners, not just students, but for all learners. And that's a big switch from a number of years ago. I just want to invite everybody too, this is a marketing thing. We have, you've got to mention lacrosse. They will have all of them. A couple years ago, Richard Mitchell, one of our faith keepers, my son Garrison, and David White were invited to the Smithsonian they were all done awards for the top collegiate athletes, male and female. And we were there, and one of the 6 finalists was a student going to the University of Albany, and his father's from Akwesasne, his mother's from Onondaga. He didn't win. Last year, him and his brother both shared the honor for the top collegiate lacrosse athlete, and it was just an amazing feat. So this weekend, 15th and 16th, we're having a festival, a lacrosse festival in Akwesasne. And on Friday, we're going to have a lot of speakers. Our Lacrosse Hall of Fame, we're help sponsoring it, and a lot of other organizations within our community. But we're bringing back a lot of lacrosse greats. We're going to have stick making. It's all going to be wooden sticks. It's not that, plastic stick. But anyway, it's all going to be wooden stick. And, but what's really, we have about 350 students coming to it from our schools, from our Freedom School, from the U.S. side, CCBS, other schools that have jumped on board. They're going to be there because what we want to do is to show, we're going to perform a medicine game, and that's going to be at 1 o'clock. The medicine game is really important because it traces back the roots of where lacrosse, they were all of them, which means netted basket, but where the game started. And it was a gift to the creator. You develop all your skills, teamwork and what have you, to give back, because we feel like the Thanksgiving address, we give thanks for what we've given from the creator, but lacrosse is very important. I mean, you could look at Abner Doubleday, founder of baseball, or Naismith, founder of basketball and all of that. When you look at lacrosse, it's where its roots, it came from, the creator for our people and in our traditions. But the medicine game is so important because what we're trying to do with that is to pass on the gifts that were given to us back to the creator, and to show those skills, but also the respect to one another. And it is a competition, but you're all invited. Come on down. And you'll see how that is performed, because it is part of the ceremony. Can't take pictures of it, but however, it's part of the ceremony if you take part in it. So, but we want to do this as an annual event, because a lot of our kids go into competition in many sports. And sometimes you see bad sportsmanship. You'll see the competitive edge of, I want to be the best and that sort of thing, and especially when it comes to team sports. And so we're trying to give back with the medicine game to say the real reason that we play the game is for ourselves and for all of our people. And so, and we also want to bring back, of course, the wooden stick, which we're really interesting. But anyways, but thank you very much for that. So.
Thank you. Trustee McAllister.
Thanks, Chair. My question seems pretty mundane and compared to the content of the presentation, which was very interesting and revealing. My question concerns the 2.456 projected budget for the FN, for the tuition agreement for Akwesasne. I'm not sure to whom I should address the question, but given the fact that native funding is a federal prerogative, then unfortunately the feds contribute about 30, I think it's 30 bit less than what the 11,424 students per, $11,424 per student for the rest of Ontario. Is this projected budget based on the federal funding by First Nations of Akwesasne or by the Ontario FTE funding?
Through you, Chair. Actually, Trustee McAllister, the amount of $2.4 million is not actually attached to the tuition dollars that are generated by the board, but totally by the enrollment as well as the credit attained in funding that the Ministry of Education provides. So it has nothing to do with the actual tuition agreement with the Akwesasne Board of Education.
Thank you for the clarification.
The tuition agreement, that is their, the federal government, of course, in its wisdom, will provide funding up to the same scale as in Ontario, in the province. However, the funding that we receive for the running of our schools is far less, a lot less per student. And I know the last figures, I mean, they've topped it up, but it starts with a base for elementary students of $4,800 per student, and to high school, $6,400 per student. They increase it through various grant programs. Grants, you apply for proposals and what have you, and it's on an annual basis, so it does creep up a bit. But what goes with that is like we have to do one audit for Upper Canada District School Board, and that. But when you do apply for these type of grants and various other resource funding for education, you have to do an audit. So Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education does, for education purposes, about 12 to 14 audits. Again, on top of that, Mohawk Council of Akwesasne has to submit 70 audits for all of its programs. Not one audit, but 70 audits and per year, which is crazy. I mean, our auditors are kept busy and
can imagine,
and get resourced.
Thank you. Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. I want to pick up on what Trustee McAllister said. The $2.4 million is funding associated from the ministry for alignment to the FNMI policy framework. That's correct?
Through you, Chair, that's correct. It's given us a supplement in the GSN grants.
So if it's aligned with the policy framework, we are finishing year 2 of the implementation of the policy framework and entering year 3 in 2015, 2016. Is that correct?
The revised.
Through you, Chair, the policy framework was revised in 2014. I believe the first policy framework came out in 2009.
Okay. So what year are we in then?
I think
This is
year
would be
5.
Year 5 or 6. Sorry.
Year 5 or
6.
grade. Year 5 or 6. I think we've
6.
Yeah, 6.
Yep. Year 6.
We're in year 6. So one of the key pieces within the policy framework was student achievement and closing the gap. If we're in year 6, I've yet to see or hear any information that's related to closing the gap. We've mentioned it, but I don't see any data in here that supports $2.5 million, which is what I appeared to read from the policy framework was the main initiative, main driver of the framework to ensure that we close that student achievement gap. So if we're going to move forward with a budget of $2.4 million, I realize it's coming in from the ministry, but how are we aligning our strategies to improve student achievement? Where's the data to show us where we are now or where we have been previously for me to support an increase in areas of this budget that are going to align with the policy framework?
Through you, Chair. A fair and good question. Very good question. I don't have all the answers, but one of the things I can say is that, and I think Gail spoke very, very closely of it, that we have been within the board, our self-ID program, I believe, has been in place since about 2009, 2008, 2009. It was really felt at that point in time, my understanding is going forward, is that the trust had to be built before we start diving into identifying the data for our FNMI group. What I'm suggesting as we go forward, because I echo exactly what you're saying with regards to we have anecdotal data that we can bring to you and testimonials, but the hard data such as the EQAO or the Tell It For Me, really suggesting that we bring together an advisory circle where we do have parents and families and FNMI community groups as well as members, staff from our own board together to take a look at the data, have the foundational data that we have right now from this year and bring foundational data in, and being able to measure the programs, understand what is working, and understand exactly some of your questions in terms of the improvement and where we need to go in terms of our goals using empirical data. And we have, and as a board, that has not been done before. If I may just add one further question to that, or one further qualifier to that. So our principals do know our students very well, and we have done, our students with the leadership of Terry and Frank have done tracking to 2020. So many of our FNMI students do fall into the tracking group there, but they're not identified as FNMI. Our principals would not know unless they really knew the students and the students had identified to them if they were FNMI or not.
I'm concerned that we're going to enter, this is year 6 that we're finishing, we're going to enter year 7. Moving forward with money, professional development money and supplies that are really only addressing a portion of the policy framework. And if we've been at it for that long, why are we waiting till now to identify and determine the achievement of our First Nation Métis students? I mean, that was one of the main drivers. Another piece around the policy framework is to ensure that we work with our First Nation communities to help build the bridges so that whenever the students do enter the Ontario schools, they're well versed and they're well accepted, I guess, or well positioned to be entering those communities. It appears that most of the evidence that we have is around the well-being aspect. And I can appreciate that's an important piece, but it's not the only piece. And so if we're going to continue to spend $2.4 million on only a portion of it, I suggest that we keep money in abeyance. And we'll have to look to Nancy from a GSN standpoint until we can collect some data to put some strategies behind how we're going to ensure that we meet all of the performance measures around the policy framework. Because I don't think we're addressing them all. It doesn't appear that we're addressing them all. And that's only a quick guess, and I apologize for making that statement that way. But
Through you, Chair, just one other clarification there too. Part of the $2.4 million, that's also 15 teachers involved for teaching the credit courses as well. So it's not just the well-being piece, I guess.
Do you want to comment on?
Yeah, just maybe, David. I think probably the only data that we do have is really the graduation rate at CCBS, and it continued because we are closing the gap there, significantly, and we're up to probably within the core about 75 to 78% graduation rate, and which is far greater than a lot of other communities in Ontario, and that's the one data. But it's a really good question because when you look at the self-ID, but you're right, I think that a lot of that money is for professional development for teachers too.
I think Trustee McDonald, you ask a really good question, and that's why, again, we would like to do that ourselves as well to get that foundational data. I think if you take a look at the expenses here, you do see that 1.6 million is in salaries, if you like, for teachers, IAs, and projection for next year is because of the growing of the programs for vice principals. So 1.6 million is there. Professional development is about 60,000 to ensure that the courses are being taught with an FNMI perspective. And then the contracted services to ensure our culturally relevant materials on that piece. So that's not just for Native Studies, this Native Studies course that comes in, but it's also for our classes to ensure that they have from their community elders or members of the community or other types of resources to supplement their teachings within their class. So 1.6 million does go to that. The contribution supporting the system as a whole within that is 325,000.
Maybe just to add to that, I thought that at 2.4 was Romaine's salary, but it wasn't. So.
Trustee Cartner.
I've had the opportunity to attend a couple of the leadership days, and it's been a real learning experience for me. And when I see the students that are involved in that, just from one session to another, the growth in those students is amazing, and it's hard to write that down or put a number on it or any. You have to see it to see the growth in these children, especially the one boy. The last day, there was an Inuit student who is a TR Leger student, I believe, with our board. And to see him get up and talk about a game that his peoples play and how he tried to explain it to the other students in the room, I thought it was quite impressive. But my question is about not only the children that are, the students that are identified, self-identified, the Native Studies courses that are offered are open to the regular students as well as the FNMI students, right? And how are the numbers? Are they increasing from the non-MI group? Do you have any idea?
Through you, Chair. Yes, as a matter of fact, well, our self-ID numbers, we know that have nowhere near reached their potential. Going back to the question previously about the data collection, we know that any data that we receive now might not be, we feel that it isn't really reflective of actual happenings. As you may know, that any forms that get sent home from school, the more proactive families and students are the ones that respond right away. And as was mentioned, the effects of the residential school, there's quite a bit of mistrust. If you look at a school and you see that there's one boy, we'll say last name is Mackenzie, in a small school, and there's 6 other Mackenzies enrolled in that school, you know they must be related, but they're not coming forward to self-ID. So we feel that we have to develop that confidence and that trust within our students and our families, and start having those personal successes with them. So that's why we've been focusing on the cultural matter and the confidence and the well-being of our students. So in our classes, in our schools, the self-ID, the grade 11s and 12s that we have with as Native Student Leadership today, we have 15 students from 10 different schools. That's not a lot of students. We have 1 or 2 students from each school, so our number of self-ID students themselves in our schools are not great. A vast majority of other students are non-self-ID, non-Aboriginal students, and the interest is building continually. Yes.
On slide number 16, the student image of future of Ontario's education system, I was quite moved by the comment, why would I want to learn from someone who doesn't want to learn from me? And I think that proves that we need our Native teachers working with our Native students as well. The comment.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just maybe want to add, and I know, Susan, I sent you well, you contributed, I think Gail and contribute to the paper that we're doing from our First Nations Trustee Council on the advocacy for curriculum, for First Nations Métis Inuit curriculum. And we're putting the paper together, and I did send a copy to you. And many of the school boards around Ontario have also contributed. And it's starting, even looking at grade 6. The grade 10 and 11 textbooks that are being used right now contains a lot of good, I would say probably more factual information. And people have responded across Ontario now as that they would like to see a lot of our teachings into all the mainstream subject areas. And so that's where it's really developing more and more. And I think it's caught on. It's and I'm seeing it in my lifetime. You know, that's what I find that's really intriguing, because I've spoken about this before, because growing up and looking at the history of both Canada and the United States and the discoverers and what have you, was really crazy, because I grew up with thinking that Tecumseh, Geronimo, Sitting Bull were all evil and were enemies. Hiawatha was a myth, you know, and that and but it's only beginning now that they're being discovered as being true patriots. Especially when we celebrate the 200th anniversary of the War of 1812 and the role that the Counsel has played. It's just kids are beginning to understand that, and they want to know more. They want to know why I have to carry a status card. They want to know why is it a reserve? Why is Akwesasne 2 reserves? What separates us and who did it? Why is there a boundary going through? So those are the really big questions that youth are asking. And when I presented to the Student Senate about the lifelong learning model, I thought was really interesting that the students themselves picked up on it and seeing that the sources and domains of knowledge is just not in the formal education that you get. It's the informal is just as important, and starting with the early learning, early years and that. So it's a big change, and I think that more and more people are beginning to understand that, the role, I guess, that we play.
Thank you. Trustee Cram.
Through you, Chair, I'm curious about the self-ID, numbers of self-ID. And I think I heard it was 350. How demographically widespread does that 350 entail?
Through you, Chair. I don't have that information. We might be able to get that, but I don't have that right now.
Okay.
Trustee McPherson.
Not a question, more of a comment. I had occasion to attend a round dance at PDCI, and I'll admit I almost didn't go because it was snowing like crazy that night, and I went anyway and half expected to find nothing happening, and I was wrong. What surprised me about that night was a number of friends that were there. People that I didn't even know were identified as natives. And I watched the ceremonies, and yeah, I got invited, but I'm not a great dancer, so I sat in the sidelines and watched. But I came away that night with kind of a eureka moment in realizing that this was part of our Canadian identity, and it's been hidden for so long. And it was just amazing. And watching these young people, 1 minute on an iPhone texting somebody, and the next minute picking up a drum and doing the singing, and everyone joining hands and going around in a circle in this dance, and it's part of our heritage, no matter who we are. And I'm so glad to see it coming to the forefront in the education system. It's no different than celebrating your Scots heritage or your Irish heritage, because it's part of that patchwork quilt that makes us Canadians. And I think this is such a positive step.
Thank you. Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. Do we receive any funding through EPO grants for First Nation Métis and Inuit?
Through you, Chair, yes, we do. We have received EPO dollars for the last 4 or 5 years. It ranges between 55, and we've had up to almost 100,000 a few years back. And again, those are they're very specific initiatives. This is probably, the EPO grant is what drove some of the leadership days at the beginning when we didn't have the same amount of funding. So it really spearheaded, if you look at the EPO grant was really the investment of getting this going, and that the return on that investment, actually, which we didn't have to use our own funds for, is now around a $2.4 million return on investment. So yes, we have, and we just don't know for next year. We're hopeful, but yes.
So if the money that you've provided on the sheet says 2.4 million, it's a little different than what the projections were from the ministry, and I can appreciate that. Our numbers potentially were off, so I assume that we've clarified that. That's GSN money. What happens in the process of this budget when the EPO money comes in?
Through you, Chair. A couple things, maybe a comment as well, is the dollars that are here, most of it, actually looking at the current year of 2014-15, the $1.59 million, if we did not have any Native study programs taking place, that number would be 0. So running these courses obviously provides us the funding. When it comes to the EPO grant, so again, if we do receive $50,000 or $60,000, again, we look at the amount of credits and then we adjust accordingly. So you see the bottom line will actually change. So again, those dollars will change if we do get the EPO grant. And sometimes we only find that out in September, sometimes in August. But we do adjust some of the expenses, and it's a conversation that I'll have with Susan, or Susan will have with me, based on maybe some additional initiatives that she may want to support. The EPO grant is very specific. It may be something totally different that we haven't even budgeted for in this particular model.
Okay. Just want to follow. Final questions? Certainly.
When it comes to the GSN dollars that are provided, that's certainly general, right? It's general. It's geared to the criteria that we have. But I'm not suggesting that we take it all away. I'm not suggesting that we do a number of things. But the fact that we are getting $2.4 million, whatever reason, however reason we generate it, the ministry has released the policy framework in 2014 with year 1, year 2, and year 3. Year 3, according to their document, is next year. They're indicating that in year 1 we should have been collecting data. That was last year. We should have been collecting data about student achievement. If we're receiving that much money, and one of the core expectants or one of the performance measures is student achievement, I'm very worried that that money may disappear very quickly if we're not achieving their work. Mm-hmm. So what time frame are we going to have to start the data collection and the planning to closing the gap on student achievement for First Nation mediating with students?
Through you, Chair, we've spent a good part of this last 6 months taking a look at that, building connections, nurturing relationships. So I'd like to see a advisory circle being in place, speak through, work with the chair on putting that in place, and have an advisory circle together by the end of June and start digging into the data for the fall. So we do have that foundational data as far back as we can go, or that the group, we worked together on the group to go, at least this past year, is foundational data to move forward on, and perhaps we have some other data that we can go back another year on. But I'm not sure about that. But I know that we do have the data this year. Some of the concerns that you have raised, I also put those in terms of questions of where we want to go. So that is, and as I said, we have built the relationships. We could tap some people on the shoulder to come in and to take a look from the First Nation Métis cultures in our community to work with us and provide that data as foundational. Through Chair, we do have the data, so that part of your question is correct. We do have the data to unpack it. That's the part of bringing some First Nation people in to assist us in understanding what is the data that the document is asking us to put in, what is our data saying, and what data is it really important in terms of we're going to measure ourselves against going forward.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. That's been a very rich discussion. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, each and every one of you, for your contributions. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on the list is an update on course selection process and e-learning. And I'll ask Superintendent Phil Dawes and Principal of Student Success and E-Learning, Frank Hummel.
Thank you, Chair. Pleased to have the opportunity tonight to bring trustees up to date with respect to our secondary course selection process. with a little information as well as it relates to e-learning. Pleased to have with me this evening our Principal of Student Success in E-Learning, Mr. Frank Hummel. And thanks as well to Superintendent Allen for the work and support she's been giving us as a team over this past year on the course selection process and our growth in e-learning. Do we have the clicker? Thanks. Oops, it's okay. So what we want to provide you with a takeaway from this presentation is twofold. I'd like to know that you, at the end of this presentation, have a deeper understanding of how the overall course selection process works and how this plays a role in our offering of e-learning courses. And also hoping at the end of this presentation that you'll have a deeper appreciation that we're moving in e-learning from default to design. We wanted to provide you a few definitions because these are terms that we tend to use a lot when we get into course selection and e-learning. So just bearing in mind, this is what we're working from. The term staffing, we're referring to a central office process of allocating teaching staff to schools based upon enrollment projections. When we use the term timetabling, we're referring to school-based process of scheduling students, staff, and courses to time periods by the day and by the semester. When we say course selection, we're talking about the process whereby secondary students select their courses for the upcoming school year. And I know Frank will talk some more about this as well, but when we talk about e-learning, we're talking about an online delivered secondary school credit course where teacher and student are not in the same physical space. So what we were hoping to do here is I'd like to take a few moments, if I could walk you through the course selection process itself, and then I'd like to hand it over to Frank, and he's going to give you some more specific information about e-learning itself. This is a diagram that we wanted to put together to, as best possible, simplify for you how the course selection process works. And it is a work in progress. That's why we've entitled this particular diagram the 2015-16 course selection process. This is a process that we've been using this year, and we're feeling good that we're moving in the same direction, in the right direction. But you can see from this diagram that the course selection process relies upon the alignment of a number of interconnected and time-sensitive events. And so please bear that in mind as we move forward. But really, the course selection process itself begins around November and December each year when schools start to take a look at what courses they would like to offer or make available for students the following year. And in doing so, our schools have become very adept at developing online course calendars. And we've also become very accustomed in our schools to offering open houses for students transitioning from grade 8 into grade 9. And of course, our guidance staff are continually working with students to keep them up to date with courses that are available for the next year. We get into the January and February period after Christmas. That's when we've, this year in particular, started to receive feedback from principals about, from their perspective, what e-learning courses they think they're going to need to offer the students in their schools for the following September. It's around the end of February that students actually begin to select courses through the My Blueprint software system. This is a system that students use to go on and select which courses they're interested in. And at this point in the year, our staff are really reminding our students, or should be, that this is very early on in the process, so we want to get a preliminary idea of what their interest level is for course selection, with a continual reminder that it won't be finalized until later in the year, or in some situations in September. When we get into March and April, that's when we get into the actual staff allocation process. And I'm not sure that one box really gives this justice. I mean, this is a very, very ongoing, time-sensitive, and rather complicated process in its own. We start with the staff allocation process through planning and research with the distribution of enrollment projections to each of our schools. We get feedback from each of our school principals on those enrollment projections. The projections become aligned with actual allocation numbers, and then eventually transition over to the names of the staff in the school. And all of that needs to be done within the constraints and the items of our collective agreements and also with a continual back and forth and agreement with our finance department on staffing affordability figures, so that we know that we're on line with what we can afford in the staffing line for September. You'll see in the April-May column, that's about where we are actually right now with the course selection process. The student course selections are uploaded from my blueprint into PowerSchool, and our schools are now beginning the process of actually taking that information and developing timetables for next year. But again, I would suggest to you that as firmly entrenched as we want schools to be able to get those timetables in place, we also know that once we get into September, adjustments are required from time to time at some schools to account for actual enrollments as they arrive. And so we do have the capability each September to provide adjustments where class caps are pierced. And Frank will speak to this as well. We do have a number of sections available specific to e-learning that provides us some good flexibility to respond to school-by-school situations as necessary and still live within our financial means. So with that overview of the course selection process itself, I want to turn it over to Frank, and he's going to give you some more information on e-learning itself.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Historically, we, the principals of Upper Canada, when we were staffing secondary schools, would come to a point in the timetable process in May or June where we would say, I can't timetable all of my students. Some of my students are conflicting. They can't take a specific subject at a specific time because they want to take another subject at that particular time. So what would happen is we, the school district, centrally would offer all schools an opportunity to enroll students in e-learning courses. And that process was typically, we called that by default rather than by design. It was used to fill gaps in school timetables, and e-learning was used to fill gaps in individual student timetables. So moving to design process, we are trying to move the whole concept of using e-learning up front. So over the last few years, we've been able to share with schools earlier in the process exactly what e-learning courses we plan to offer centrally to all schools so that they can have their students during course selection time in February have e-learning as an option. So we're trying to better integrate the practice of e-learning offerings with school timetabling. And we don't confess to be there just yet, but we're working in that direction. So one of the things that we felt you should have an understanding of is exactly how e-learning courses have come about in the province of Ontario. So a number of years ago, the Ministry of Education decided that they needed to invest in e-learning courses, and they seconded teachers from across the province to write courses, or they released teachers to write courses. And currently we have 112 different courses available from the Ministry of Education taught by our day school teachers to students. But the other thing the ministry did provide is they provided an online learning management system that's called Desire to Learn. The ministry didn't create it in-house. That management system had existed for a while, and Desire to Learn is a company actually out of Waterloo, Ontario, that developed the learning management system. It's now the largest learning management system in the world, and Ontario is one of Desire to Learn's largest clients. The management system is also used by a number of colleges and universities, and as I mentioned, it is a homegrown entity in Waterloo. Interestingly enough, a little tidbit of information for you, former Premier Dalton McGuinty is now an employee of Desire to Learn.
Down the tubes.
So two key points again is that the learning management system is provided by the province and the courses are provided by the province, but individual teachers teaching those courses have an opportunity to change the content or alter the delivery of the content in terms of what is taught at what point over the course of the semester. The next slide really shows you the growth of e-learning, day school e-learning in time. So the top graph really shows from 2008 to current how we've moved from offering 14 courses in e-learning over the course of a year in Upper Canada to now offering in this year 47. And the bottom graph really shows you the growth of students from Upper Canada taking e-learning courses from 289 in 2008 to this current year at 919. The next slide is meant to be more of a snapshot for you. How the left side of the graph really shows the number of students in every one of our high schools who are currently taking or who took in semester 1 an online course this year. The right side of the chart really shows you of those 47 course offerings who is hosting that course and from what school they're hosting it from. Now the right side, I'm just going to mention that those numbers change from year to year. 1 year a school may have one course offering, and the next year they may have 3 or 4 course offerings. So it varies, but they're hosting that course for all of Upper Canada. And in a few moments, you'll learn how Upper Canada is part of a consortium and how we share e-learning students across Ontario. The benefits of e-learning that we're finding now after a good number of years of offering it to our students is the number one thing we hear from students is it's flexible. I like it. I can have any course. I can take it at any place and I can take it at any time, and I'm not stuck to a rigid timetable to when I want to do that course. It also helps school administration avoid timetable conflicts, and it does foster in our students sort of the growth of 21st century skills that they'll need later in life. It allows our small secondary schools a chance to offer a full range of courses. So it allows our schools to better respond to student interests. And if a student is interested in philosophy, we can offer them philosophy. If they're interested in earth science, we can give them an earth science course. And if they're interested in something like fashion and design, and they may only have 1 or 2 other students in the school that are interested in fashion and design, those students can take a fashion and design course. And it also, of course, the last point here is that it does prepare our students for life after high school, as many of our post-secondary institutions and employment opportunities train their students or their employees online. So Pizza Hut trains all of their staff online. Before you're allowed to go on the floor of any Pizza Hut, you need to take the training and prove that you've got the certificate. General Motors does a lot of their training for their automotive service technicians online. Canadian Tire, I'm told, also does some service excellence training online for their employees. So online learning is a fact of life for many students and for all of us. And now I think it's back to Phil.
Okay, I'll talk a bit to this slide. Again, we're trying to give you an appreciation of where we are right now with the growth of e-learning, and we are moving from default to design, as Frank has mentioned. I've felt very encouraged this year in working with Frank, working with Val, working with our school principals. A lot of this is, I'll use the word operational, trying to get everything lined up so that we can really get to the heart of what does a good e-learning program look like and maximize opportunities for our students. So there is opportunity here, but it's not without some challenges. And quite frankly, in moving further along from default to design, we're continually trying to deal with and respond to some of these issues. For example, increasing demand. Every evidence we have across the system is that there will be continued demand from students for e-learning courses, and we want to be able to respond to that demand, but we want to do it within the capacity of our abilities. Student choice. We want to be able to respond as best possible to student choice, but again, it's enveloped within our operational capabilities and our affordability line. Declining enrollment continues to be something that we need to be aware of on the secondary front. Enrollment decline, for all intents and purposes, has leveled out on the elementary line. On our secondary schools, we can expect about another 3 years of enrollment decline. So e-learning offers both an opportunity and a challenge in that respect. It offers an opportunity for more flexibility of course selections for our students in small schools, but wrapped up against that is the challenges, again, of operations. School staffing allocations. When I showed you in that diagram, the allocation process itself is a very time-consuming process. It's a necessary process, but we need to build e-learning in as a part of that overall process. And so we're doing our best to align e-learning allocations, again, with the collective agreements and with a view to balance and equity across our system. School timetabling. We've had 2 very good sessions this year with our secondary school principals specific to school timetabling, because we realized earlier on in this year that this was an area that needed some attention. There are different timetabling practices across our board, and we want to do our best to harmonize that and give the support to the schools that they're asking for, and in doing so, we'll be able to align our e-learning strategy much more effectively. The ministry consortium that Frank mentioned, obviously this is a critical piece to our ability to move forward. We're not working in isolation here. We need to take into consideration the demand that's happening from other boards across Ontario, and we have to be knowledgeable as well as to situations where our students can access e-learning course availability from other boards. So that needs to be built into our process as well. Staff capacity. Who are the teachers that want to do e-learning effectively, and how do we build upon that capacity to make sure that we can expand the programs that our students are asking for across our board and do it as effectively as possible? That's on our minds a lot. And again, at the end, parent and community expectations. I think there's variations across our board in our community's understanding of e-learning and what it holds for the future. And our communities that understand it and embrace it are moving very well, and we want to be able to ensure that all of our communities get to that level so that we can, again, move forward from default to design as effectively as possible. So again, I think we've touched on most of these points. This was our progress this year. I mentioned the timetabling workshops. We're really at a point right now where we're just focusing on getting better alignment between e-learning offerings and the timetabling process. We have the additional qualifications course, and our consortium strategy continues, but from both a local perspective, but a deepening of our understanding of where the ministry is taking this longer term. So with that, we feel like we're well positioned to keep the board informed of our e-learning strategy as we proceed, and thank you for the time this evening.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions? Trustee McAllister.
I have a number of concerns and questions about this presentation. I should note that the question or the motion to which this report refers was framed in the context of a question from the former chair, Petersma, with regard to a problem that he as a parent was experiencing. In slide 6, I note here that in 2014-2015, there are 919 students enrolled. Yet in slide 7, when I look at the number of students by school and add them up, it comes to 698. Could you explain that discrepancy?
that would likely, or through you, Chair, the statistics you see on this slide here show students who took one course. The 919, some of those students took more than one course.
Okay, thank you. Supplementary, if I could. Could you tell us how many students of the 712 in 2013-14 over the 38 courses taken, how many students completed the courses?
Through you, Chair, I don't have that data in front of me. We could certainly obtain that data and report back at a later date.
It would seem to me that this is rather core to the e-learning presentation. And I guess a third question I would have is, what was their rate of success? Anyway, I'll leave it to others to ask further questions.
Trustee Karkner, then Trustee Cram, and then Trustee McPherson.
I have a question also, Chair.
And eventually, Trustee Wendy McPherson. Hang on there.
Thank you.
Thank you for this. We've been, as you well know, e-learning has been an issue that has come up with, probably all of the trustees have had a question about it from our high schools or parents. And I'm curious, back on your slide number 3, where you said that schools review which courses they plan to offer. I understand your strategy is to get it out there before the children decide at the end of timetabling that there's no teacher to teach this or the course is not available, then they have to scramble. But how do principals make up their minds as to which courses they're going to offer back in November? Through you, Chair, to whomever.
Through you, Chair, I'll take a stab at it. And I think you've really hit on an important point, Trustee Kartner, and that's why we've been working with schools through the timetabling process itself, because some schools, quite frankly, understand how to use this process a bit better than others. So I mentioned earlier on this is how important it is to schools, for schools to maintain a good communication line with their students so that they understand how their course selections are aligned with the actual overall process itself. So if changes need to be made later on in the process, they're accommodated as best possible. So these kinds of questions are arising through the timetabling work that we've been doing with our school principals, and we're building some capacity in that respect. But I totally agree, it's in its earliest stages and we continue to work on it.
Are these grade 11, grade 12, or right from grade 9, or even grade 7 in our 7 to 12 schools? These courses?
Through you, Chair, I'll ask Frank to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that they are primarily grade 11 and 12 courses.
I have another question, but I guess I can let it go until others have had a turn.
Trustee Cram.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Slide 7, and the courses do add up to 47. How many of those courses are different subject courses?
Through you, Chair, some are repeats, but the vast majority are single sections offered once.
Follow up. And I understand from Trustee Kartner's question about them being basically grade 11 and 12. But if we look down the future and we start getting 9 to 12 courses and the enrollment goes up, how does that affect our GSN for budget? And would it be possible for a student to graduate completely without entering a high school?
Through you, Chair, the funding for day school e-learning courses is exactly the same funding as we would receive as a school board through the GSN for a traditional or face-to-face course. And your second question, I'll need to have it repeated.
Well, will it affect our GSN budgets if a student actually doesn't attend any of our secondary schools because they do all of their learning through e-learning?
Through you, Chair, it won't affect our bottom line GSN budget, and yes, it is possible for a student if they can obtain enough courses through online to receive all their courses, all of their high school career online.
Supplemental?
Sorry, and I'll just clarify, if the school district offers those to them.
Where would that student be registered?
That student, through you, Chair, that student would need to register at a quote-unquote home school or neighborhood school and be put on the register there. Thank you. Trustee McPherson.
Yeah, through the chair. I think you partially answered one of my questions. Thinking back, though, when this came to the board, I think we've only answered half of the question here. I think as trustees, as Carol said, we've all had issues about students not being able to get courses that were full, even though they'd registered for them. So I think there's more to this to come. And my question was going to be, is this available to homeschoolers? But I believe you just answered that by saying they have to register with our board to qualify for e-learning through our board. So they have to be registered students with us. So, but I do have some concerns. I'm not sure that the original motion has been addressed here, because part of the issue was students that needed a course, it was unavailable even though the course was there, but it was oversubscribed, and the rationale behind why some students got into the course and others didn't.
So do you have a question? Is that just a comment?
It's already answered the question I had, but I'm just expressing the concern.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure this report addresses the original motion.
Comment. Thank you so much. Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Thank you. My question regards challenges, and like the other trustees, parents have been vocal with me, especially the graduating class parents of 11s and 12s, who are very frustrated with the lack of choices and the fact and how difficult it is once they've made these choices and then are declined being able to take these e-learning classes. What are we doing about that problem? Through you, Chair.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair. I felt very encouraged this year back in September when working through the enrollments as they came in the first week of school. We were in constant contact with our secondary school principals to maintain an ongoing dialogue around where their class size issues, class cap issues that needed to be addressed. And we were doing our best to work with them to explore a number of solutions. We're not quite there yet, but I feel much more confident that in maintaining these relationships with our principals, with these dialogues, we're getting to the heart of the issue. And we're now strategizing more concretely how we can have available course sections that we can allocate to the schools in these particular situations as those enrollment numbers come in the first 2 weeks of school. That was really our intention this year, to work as early as possible with our school principals to develop a deeper capacity in their ability to timeline now in alignment with our enrollment projections, the staff that's been allocated to their school, and an overall strategy that's going to be in place for next September. Ultimately, we're at the beck and call of enrollments as they arrive in the school in September. And for some schools, it's not as big an issue as in others. And so, again, we're working on our data retrieval process to continually monitor those enrollments as they come in so that we've got that figured out by the end of the second week of school. The other thing we did this year that I don't think we've done as much in previous years was really kept track of the course selection process as it related to other sections that were available from other boards as a part of the consortium. Because quite frankly, in those first few weeks of school, we get into waiting list situations, and it's very difficult to understand how those waiting lists are moving. So we were in constant contact with our other area partner boards to understand what the impact was of those movements, and so that we could, as best possible, get students aligned with those course selections. So again, it's not a perfect process. I'm not sure we'll ever get to the client level satisfaction that we would like, just by virtue of the fact that we have terribly small secondary schools, and it makes it ultimately challenging to be able to offer the ultimate selection in courses that we would like. But I think we've improved a lot, and I think you'll expect to see some improvements in the years to come.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Kirkner and then Trustee McDonald.
Through you, Chair. Question for Principal Hummel, I imagine. What supports do we have in our schools that are offering e-learning for those students who can't quite handle it and there's no other course the same in the school? What supports do we have for those students? I'm thinking more of the math and the physics and the chemistry.
Through you, Chair, the support for our e-learning students in our schools varies from school to school because it's a timetabling approach. So what teacher may be available at any given time to support a student depends on the school timetable. So essentially there are a couple stable factors to support our students who are taking e-learning. The first support really comes from the student success teacher, if they're available, because we don't always have a student success teacher available every period of every day. If we don't have a student success teacher available and the school offers an MZIP period, then there's an opportunity to match the e-learning student with a teacher in MZIP who's qualified in that subject area where the student is taking the e-learning course to be supported. Sometimes the special education teacher would be available to support the student. So it varies from school to school, and it varies from period to period in a school in terms of who's available to support these e-learning students.
Yes, and with the technology that we have in Upper Canada schools, does it happen that, say, a teacher in Glengarry is teaching physics and there's a student in VCI that needs that same course? Is there any way that the timetabling can be such that the student could be linked in with that teacher and class in Glengarry to take the lesson with an actual teacher in front of them? Has that hadn't been tried yet?
Through you, Chair, there's a few clauses in our collective agreement that make that opportunity a bit challenging.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. Dawes kind of picked up on some of the things I wanted to raise. I think it's important to note the staffing aspect, and you would touch upon the definition of staffing. It's purely based on enrollment. We are at a complete disadvantage. The smaller the school, the very great more difficulty there is to get courses in that particular school. However, the community will take that information and say, well, I can't get this course for my son or daughter because whatever. And they don't look at the e-learning as the alternative, right? It's just, I couldn't get it in front of that teacher at that particular time. I think it's an important aspect that we focus on, that when we look at trying to solve everything across our Board of Education, is that the staffing aspect is tied completely to enrollment. We can't, if we want to over staff our schools, those are different discussions that we have to have. And then course selection becomes a lot easier. Our decision, our job becomes very much more difficult to find the money, though. The one piece I wanted to ask and pick up upon is on a course selection side of things. Let's put e-learning aside for a second. Course selection side of things. How does class cap or class averages affect us in any particular high school when it comes to course selection? And let me give you an example. If we have a class of whatever subject it might be, and we have 35 kids that want it. Yet we have another course that's being offered, and we only have 13 kids in it. That becomes even more challenging. Put the blueprint stuff away, right? That's a best guess. We think it's going to happen this way. We do our best effort to try and get the courses for the kids. What happens in a situation where we've got 35 kids that want to take Class A, and we have a class of 12 that want to take Class B? What's the scenario that typically plays out?
Through you, Chair, That's a dilemma that principals face every year at this time. But essentially the process that a principal would take is in February and in early March, they would look at course request tallies by subject area. So principals would know in March, based on student selections in February, how many students in their school, for example, wanted ENG 3U, so that's grade 11 university streamed English. They would also know how many students selected grade 9 applied math, for example. So they would have all of those tallies, and when they look at those tallies, they hope and pray that they come in increments that match our collective agreement language for class caps. So you hope that you would have 30 students select ENG 3U because that's the class cap. The challenge we have, and you've laid it out nicely in a scenario, is what do you do when you have 35 students and you know you can only allocate one section of ENG 3U? And conversely, what do you do when you have 13 students that want another course? So a couple strategies come into play. First and foremost, one of the strategies you'll see enacted in our schools is, it's called different things in different schools. Some schools call it combined classes or stacked classes, which essentially means they may have another English class that might be an ENG 4U with only 15 students, but if you combined or stacked those classes, you would have a group of 50 students or two groups of 25, and you would run the class in that way. So again, they look at the course request tallies based on student requests, and then they hope that the numbers work out to match the numbers of our collective agreement language, and if they don't, then they look at creative ways like stacking and combining courses to offer a program to students.
Follow up on that?
No, it's good.
Just on not a follow up on that particular, but just to get into the learning aspect. I think it's a valid question that Trustee McAllister asked. How many people or how many students are completing them? We want to know that it's effective. But from the delivery aspect on e-learning, is it a strictly an independent type learning module, or is it a blending learning module that would help those kids who may have difficulty learning on their own, but a blended model would, similar to the Khan Academy, right? I'll use that as an example. You're not going to get to stage 2 unless you have the mastery skills of stage 1, so that they have an understanding and appreciation of what's required at that particular level. I mean, stage isn't the right level, right description, but I think you get the gist of what I mean.
Through you, Chair, the 112 courses that the ministry has provided to school districts to use, those classes are set up so that they're interactive, so that there's a constant dialogue between the teacher and the student, and there's constant dialogue between the students. They're not set up per se to be done independently. They're meant to be interactive. And I may add that a good number of our teachers, at last count, 17% of our secondary teachers have taught an online course at one time or another in their career. And another 17% have what we call blended classes. So they've used the e-learning platform, the Desire to Learn platform, in their classroom to deliver content. It is a face-to-face class that they're teaching, but they're relying on Desire to Learn to have some of their course content be delivered. So we have some growing capacity in our school district for teachers to teach using the e-learning platform. But I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Trustee Bill McPherson.
Through the chair. Bit of a loaded question here. They offer 112 courses. Now, proprietary rights belongs to the Ministry of Education, I'm assuming. In other words, they're the ones that control the 112 courses. If a family was homeschooling you have to register with a board, or do you register with the ministry to get permission to homeschool? We have the potential here for somebody that's homeschooling by gaining access to this e-learning, especially if you continue to expand it, that you technically could get a secondary graduation diploma without setting foot in any school. And is there a requirement, and here's the question, for a homeschooler to be registered with any board, or do they simply indicate their desires to the ministry? And
Want to take a stab at that?
Yeah. Through you, Chair. The ministry grants homeschoolers access to e-learning courses, but their access needs to first come through the school. So the parent of the homeschooled child needs to come and register the student to get the login information and credentials to access the e-learning courses.
Justin McAllister.
Can you tell me how e-learning in, say, a French course addresses the two main goals of listening and speaking? And secondly, if we were to take a look at any physics, chemistry, or biology course for which a major component is labs, how is that addressed in e-learning?
Through you, Chair. The way the French expectations of listening and speaking is primarily done is the e-learning platform has some technology whereby the student would record their voice and email that voice recording to the teacher or to other students. So the dialogue is happening through that technology. In terms of physics, chemistry, and biology, what happens is the labs are created in that electronic or technological format. So the dissection of a frog, which typically happens in biology, is done through the animation of the online really video capabilities of the platform. So there are ways in which physics, biology, and chemistry are taught online, basically by leveraging technology.
Supplemental. When we look at the original motion, which was for the director to bring a report back at the May 2015 meeting on two issues, course selection process update and alternate delivery methods, including e-learning. With regard to the course selection process update, the only thing that I can see that is different, if it is different, because I think it was the same last year, is that we've moved from default to design with regard to e-learning. And the second one has not been addressed at all. Alternate delivery methods, including e-learning.
Through you, Chair, I'll pick up the first part in terms of the course selection process, respond to that. The My Blueprint program that Superintendent Dawes referred to in the presentation, My Blueprint is a software program, again developed in-house in Ontario. A person out of Toronto developed this. He's now sold My Blueprint worldwide, which is a great success story. But the My Blueprint course selection feature, when a student enters My Blueprint, they not only see their listing of courses that they can select for the subsequent school year, but My Blueprint has other features embedded in the program. So one of the other features is a goal-setting module. They can build a resume in the program. But the beauty of My Blueprint is it has some features related to post-secondary planning as well as financial planning and occupational planning. So when a student clicks on a secondary course that they're thinking about taking, what automatically shows them is their eligibility for post-secondary opportunities and jobs. So they can see those opportunities present themselves. So if they're interested in, if they select, for example, MCT 4C Math, what will populate on the screen in front of them are the number of post-secondary opportunities related to that course selection. Now that course selection opens up the world of apprenticeship to that student, opens up the world of any college tech program to that student. Also, if a student selects English 4U, what is shown in my blueprint when they select ENG 4U is the opportunities of all the colleges and universities across Canada and all the programs that they could take if they select that course. Also, if they are interested in an occupation, if they were going to go to interested in being a plumber, through the process in my blueprint where they look at occupational planner, they can see links to job sites. And these are active links where a student can see, oh, if I'm interested in a plumber, I'll just click the links that take me to current jobs across Canada for a plumber, and I can see the salary range and I can see the availability of jobs as a plumber. They can even see the forecast in the future for how many jobs will be required across Canada for plumbers. So it's a very sophisticated program, and it comes back to those choices that the student makes at the time of course selection. So they can literally see their life unfold with a click of a few mouse, with a few clicks of the mouse, and the beauty of the My Blueprint. So that's been a bit of an advancement for us as we have adopted as a school district My Blueprint. It's now used in all of our schools, and it's growing in popularity and use across Ontario. In terms of the second question, I'll defer it to Superintendent Dawes.
And through you, Chair, I'd like to clarify again, some of the advancements we've made this year in the course selection process relate to the feedback that we've been receiving from principals to get an earlier jump, if you will, on the actual availability of e-learning courses. Instead of just making them available after the fact, we're taking a preemptive step to hear back from principals about what they think will be required in their schools earlier on so that they can incorporate that planning into their timetabling work. The other advancements we've made this year, again, relate back to the workshops that we've been holding with school principals. These have been very well received, and we're feeling very confident that it's time well spent to get a commonality of approach on timetabling, that we're also checking centrally and providing assistance to schools so we can get some commonality across our system. The other component of this that we've built on relates to the adjustments that are required in September when actual enrollments appear in schools. And I appreciate what Trustee McDonald said. We do have to remind ourselves that we're funded through essentially enrollment. And so we are trying as best possible to align our course section process with the availability of sections as it aligns with our affordability figure, which is derived through student enrollments. And so we've become much more nimble starting last September in those first 2 weeks of schools, maintaining a regular communication with school principals so that we can understand the issues that they're dealing with and respond accordingly. The work that we've been doing this year, again, through the timetabling work and the workshops and the advanced view of available e-learning courses, will better position us this coming September to continue work in that capacity.
Through you, Chair.
Hang on for a second, Trustee McAllister, you got a follow-up to that?
Yes, thank you for the
Just a moment
clarification
online there.
on that progress. I appreciate that. My question is, have you ever undertaken since 2008, 2009, have you ever, or has a client level satisfaction survey ever been taken?
Excuse me, through you, Chair, specific to e-learning?
Yes, specific to e-learning.
Through you, Chair, to my knowledge, I don't believe so, no, but you raise an interesting point, and I think it would be something well worthwhile undertaking.
Trustee Swan?
Thank you. I just had a couple questions in regards to the number of e-learning courses hosted. Almond hosted one, yet there's 101 students. let's say South Grenville hosted 6, and there's only 51 students. Does this mean that 101 took that one course at Almont?
Through you, Chair, no, it does not mean that 101 students from Almont were registered in the one course that Almont was hosting. What it means is 101 students from Almont were taking any number of courses offered by Upper Canada by any one of those host schools. They may also have been taking courses offered as part of our consortium boards sharing students, e-learning students. So there's no parallel between the numbers on the chart on the left and the numbers on the chart on the right.
Thank you. And a secondary question that's not related is how, through you, Chair, how many of these courses, if any, are supporting our students in getting their French certificate?
Through you, Chair, there's very few French, of those 112 courses that the ministry provides us in the e-learning format, there's very few that are French. That being said, we have offered, I think, this current school year, 2 French-delivered online courses. The ministry is actively asking boards of education if we're interested in writing courses. So we in Upper Canada this year responded to that request, and we're currently writing 3 French online courses that the ministry hopes to have up and going for September. And those 3 French courses were written by teachers in Upper Canada. And if they make it through the vetting process that the ministry will undertake over the summer, those 3 courses will be added to the other 112 course offerings for next fall.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, can I make a comment?
Certainly. Sharon?
Thank you.
If you could.
I actually had no idea about the feature where you said the courses and it gives you a list of university programs you could take next year. I think that's really important. I think that's an amazing feature. However, I don't think that very many students know about it, and I think that you should advertise it and even educate teachers on where to find that information. I think that's very useful.
Through you, Chair, that's called the employability, or not the employability, but it's called the pathway eligibility feature. And we'll make sure that we work with our guidance teachers so that when they're working with the students, they can make them aware of that feature in My Blueprint. Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you, Trustee Cruz. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, last one. Promise.
Promise. I'm holding you to it. Trustee McAllister, go ahead.
There have been a number of issues raised by trustees concerning this report with regard to certain, in French, lacune, whatever name it is, certain begging questions that are begged to be answered. I'm wondering if we could have a supplementary report to attempt to answer some of those.
Certainly. Do you have a timeline you'd like on that?
Before the end of the year?
May I seek clarification?
Certainly.
I think Trustee McAllister, through the chair, I think Trustee McAllister, I heard earlier on you asking about credit attainment as it relates to e-learning courses. And a second piece that you mentioned was alternate delivery methods, including e-learning. So where is the information about the alternate methods other than e-learning?
Mm-hmm.
So those would be 2 pieces.
Just a point of procedure, Mr. Chair. If we're giving direction, we should do that in the form of a motion.
I was just waiting
as
for that.
opposed to any ambiguity that might be around it.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to get Trustee McAllister to give us.
I will so move the motion then, to the effect that the director report in a supplementary report to the board on e-learning with regard to the other alternate means of delivery as one point. As a second point, the
Credits.
the number of credits completed versus the number of credits undertaken and the success of students in those courses. Those are a few things that I could think of off the top of my head.
So you're looking for, those are included in the report that you want to see?
Yes.
Okay. And the timeline, you like that by June?
I would say the end of June.
June 16th?
Whenever the date.
17th is the last one.
17th, whatever.
17th? Okay, do I have the motion here in front of me? I do not. Okay, can you word that in such a way that we can,
Beg your pardon?
Bring it along. Or you're
I don't have it written. All right. It's moved by myself. Seconded by trustee
I haven't
Karkner.
got the motion written just yet, but we're just working on this right now.
That we direct the director to bring a supplementary report based on the e-learning report as of tonight's meeting, outlining A, the other alternate means of delivery being contemplated as per the motion, B, the number of...
Just a minute, John.
Going too fast?
Yeah, a little bit.
Usually I'm the one that goes too fast, but it's okay.
Okay, A is what, the first one?
A is outlining the other alternate means of delivery as mentioned in the motion. The original motion, John. The original motion, yes.
Yes, in the original motion. All right, so far,
B. And B,
B,
data concerning the number of courses completed in each of the years since inception, 2008 to at least the end of 2014.
Jurassic Park,
And C, the rate of success in those courses. And D, I guess I could throw this in. What would a survey look like? A client satisfaction survey.
He's kind of inside the parameters of the motion. I think he's
Pardon me?
gone beyond the motion.
I think, yeah, I agree with that.
Survey's really going to take a long time.
I think the surveys goes outside of that, so
Then
let's...
we can leave the survey out.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to leave that out, so I'll read this as soon as I get it on the bigger screen.
At the board meeting, June 17th.
June 17th.
Okay, so the Committee of the Whole directs the Director to bring a supplementary report based on the e-learning report outlined in this e-learning report. So how about the e-learning report given on May the 13th, 2015? A, outlining, or A, other alternate means of delivery, as mentioned in the original motion dated December the 11th, 2014. B, data concerning the number of courses completed in each year since 2008 to the end of 2014. And C, the rate of success in those courses to be reported at a board meeting of June the 17th, 2015. It was moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Karkner.
I have a question. I'm concerned with the C. I think completion is one thing, success is another. We don't see any other courses coming before the board as to the success of their offering. I think that's very unique to the students who are taking the online courses, and I think the important factor for us is they've completed the course, and maybe it's a pass or not, but I don't think we need to see success beyond that. I even question whether they pass or not, because we don't see that for any other course. we see credit attainment as a generalized aspect, and I'm just worried about that.
We'll have a credit attainment then instead of C.
But my concern is that we're looking for credit attainment around online learning. If we're concerned about credit attainment, we should be concerned about credit attainment overall. If the success of the program is that we get students through, I guess I'm having a hard time understanding where we need to go, where you're trying to go with this. If they complete it, then that's the box is checked off. We put them in the course, they've completed the course. If we want to know how well our students are doing, we don't ask how well all of our students do in math. Every particular year, we see certain key results that are provided to us, and we don't ask for it for any other section. So I'm worried about the online learning aspect.
May I respond?
Certainly.
The reason I ask that question is if it's not enough that students take the course and that they complete it, we need to know how successful e-learning is based on whether or not they pass it.
You could say that about any course.
What are we going to do if it isn't?
Well, that's a good question.
We don't have the money to offer other programs. So the solution that we've been provided by our staff has said, every course that our students want, we cannot offer. So here is an alternative. And if they're not successful, are we prepared to say, sorry, students, you'll have to come back another year?
Through you, Chair?
Go ahead, Trustee Swan.
Do we not have a motion on the table that was firsted and seconded, so should we not just vote on this as a point of order?
No, we're discussing it right now. Once the motion is put forward, we can discuss.
I wonder if it might be germane to compare the results in one form of delivery, the credit attainment in one form of delivery versus the e-learning. So I'm not, that maybe is too ambitious, but I'm just thinking if you just get the success rate of online learning courses that represent a variety of courses in the high school curriculum, you have really nothing to compare it to. But if you said, let's assess the success of online grade 11 math course to regular instruction of the grade 11 math course, and is there a difference in the success rate?
Trustee Cran, you want to jump in on that?
Through you, Chair. What is the possibility of splitting up the three areas individually? Because I hate to see the motion lost on Part B, where I think Part B could probably solve with different wording.
Ask for separate.
I'm amenable to separate motions.
Just vote on them separately.
We have three motions there. There's A, B, and C. So the rate of success this is C, the rate of success in those courses to be reported back to the board. Are we in agreement to remove that one? Or do we, Trustee Cartner and Trustee McAllister, you're the ones that have that in there?
I might suggest that the Director has made a good suggestion, which is germane to the issue, and that is that we compare the results in, say, grade 11 physics e-learning to grade 11 physics across the board taken in a regular school. If that would be acceptable, then that's fine by me. I think that would be a good one.
Trustee Cartner?
I don't mean to contradict the mover on this and being the seconder, but I'm thinking of the timeline. That's a lot of work to do between now and June 16th. If you're going to be comparing the online courses to the regular classroom courses that are going on in Upper Canada, that's a big task.
Is it? How do you know?
No,
Well, just thinking of the number.
Let's keep this going through the chair here. Let's just keep it the way it should be. Yes. Trustee Crabb?
I'm more interested to find out how many took the course and how many completed it, whether they passed it or not passed it. For me, it doesn't matter because we don't ask that data of somebody who took grade 12 math during the school year, whether how many passed and how many failed. We just go on the graduation rate and they redo the course, if that's particularly the way it would work. So I'd rather see how many took it and how many completed it, whether they passed or not. And that's why my suggestion of splitting it so that that part comes out and we can reword it.
Senator Pearson.
The litmus test that we gauge our regular courses by is credit achievement or attainment. So if we're offering, say, 45 courses in e-learning, can we not simply have an indication of how many credit requirements were made, instead of specifically saying we're going to do English, we're going to do this, we're going to do that? Because we do use credit attainment as a way of measuring student success. We have that catchphrase of what, 16 by something. So if we've got, let's, somewhere between 600 and 900 courses being offered, is there 70% of these courses delivering what is hoped to be delivered, which is a credit attainment, rather than simply saying success rate or anything like that, and not picking out an individual subject? In other words, measuring student success rather than course success.
Take this back to, well, basically, if I understand what the intent behind the motion is, Trustee Callistron, correct me if I'm wrong, you're basically looking to see whether or not students are taking e-learning courses and attaining a credit at the end of it, at completion.
Yes.
That's really what you want to know.
Yes.
That's what it's.
So could we simplify it by just simply saying that data concerning the number of credits attained through e-learning in specific courses, if you want to even go further than that?
That would be fine.
Commissioner McDonald is shaking your head. I know that we don't do this in any other course, but if the intent of the motion is to see the effectiveness of e-learning, and if the only true way of knowing in the educational system, the only time we know the program is successful is if a student completes it. We don't care about the mark. They complete it. In this case, they complete it to get a credit because that's the intent behind the e-learning course. If the intention is just to get the credit, and that's all we need to know as trustees, because we don't dig any deeper than that on anything else, credit attainment obviously is an important part. Push back you on throwing out to what I think is the intent of the motion.
I come back to the whole idea that if we were to look at delivery of, for you, English, we want to know how many credits are attained here. Are we going to start to ask the question, how many credits are attained in the regular school? Because if we're that concerned about student achievement, and that's the granularity that we want, then we should be asking those questions. However, from my own personal perspective, the granularity that I don't want to get to that level. I want to know that our students are meeting the needs, students are getting one area from one section to the next section successfully, and are meeting our overall goal of 90% graduation. That's the level that we should be at. The KPIs that staff put in place to ensure that we achieve the 90% is up to them, right? They need to make sure that they have those programs in place. I get the return on investment aspect. I come back to the idea that if we don't offer e-learning, we don't offer programs to our kids. We are caught between a rock and a hard place here, folks. You don't like it, but you got nothing else. Maybe through the other position of alternatives, we may see that. But it's the best that we have.
Point of order, Chair. I'm not arguing about whether e-learning is good or bad. That's not the issue. And I don't get your point.
Well, I had the floor, and I'm not certain why you wanted to cut me off, but in any event, we are voting on a motion that Trustee McAllister's put in place. specific questions that I don't believe are required for us to decide today, for us to even have the information. We have a specific goal in mind for our administration to achieve, 90% graduation. Now we're going to get into the granularity of saying every particular funding that we put in place for online learning, we want to know whether those kids are successful or not. We want to know whether the 90% graduation is achieved or not. That's what we're looking for. That's the overall goal that we're looking for. I'm fine if we want to know how many kids are enrolled and how many kids finish. I think that's an important question to ask. To get to the next level, I don't agree.
Then vote against it.
Trustee McPherson.
Trustee McAllister, I have the option to speak my mind at the floor. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, but you have to keep those comments to yourself.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Trustee McAllister, or trustee, sorry, McPherson.
Okay. We're breaking new ground here. We're going, we are offering something that 10 years ago would have been unthought of. It could be the future of secondary education in Ontario, if you take it far enough. Like, quite often somebody will say, 50 years from now, will we need bricks and mortar for schools? I think we need a degree of measure of the success of this program. It's not cheap to do, and as our schools become less populated, as we continue with the struggle of keeping small high schools open, it's going to become a key part of our ability to deliver. So I still think the simple measure, and I'm not agreeing with anybody over there, this is my opinion, because I don't want to get it in the way. A simple measure of saying we've got 900 kids doing the course. Tell us how many successfully completed and attained a credit. And it should be fairly easy to measure, and it should be valuable information that if 2 years from now they come and say we want to expand our e-learning, we've got some information in our pocket that it is successful or it is not successful. And I think it's a simple measurement of the success of this program.
Okay, let me look at the motion and see if we can make it in such a way that we can get this motion through. The first part, A, I don't see disagreement in terms of coming back to us and asking really what was in the intent of the original motion, other alternate means of delivering as mentioned. So that, do I have any disagreement on that one? A stays. We good? B, data covering the number of courses completed in those years, 2008 to 2014. All we're asking for is data on the number of courses completed. Do we have any opposition on that? Because I think you said you were good with that. Is everyone okay with A and B so far? 3 is the number of credits attained, and this is where the issue becomes a problem because we're starting to look at things that we would not normally look at in other courses. I'm going to ask the mover, John, if we could, in this particular motion, just move the motion as it stands with A and B only at this point, and leave out of the motion looking at the success rate or the data concerning the number of courses. Pardon me?
Is it the number of students who complete courses? What does that mean, number of courses completed? Or is it the number of students who complete courses?
I believe we're looking at the number of students that start a course and do they finish it. Am I correct? So yes. All right, so it's the data of number of courses completed in each year. So any student that starts a course, do they finish it? Do you think that wording needs to be more specific on that?
I would say it would be the number of students who completed the course.
Through you, Chair?
Mm-hmm.
Well, just hang on for a second, Trustee Swan. We're just trying to work wording here, and then I'll come to you right directly, I promise. So we're looking at B, data concerning the number of students that completed an online course in each of the years since inception 2008 to 2014. So let me read that again. Data concerning the number of students that completed an online course in each of the years since inception, 2008, 2014. Trustee McAllister, does that get close to your point, or are we going off track on this?
Close enough.
Are you sure? Trustee Swan, you wanted to jump in on this?
Well, I just wanted to ask through you to the director, which information is easier to obtain, B or C?
Well, we haven't got the C because we may or may not have C. So let me just read
Yeah,
C.
you said that, but I'm just wondering, is B going to be difficult to get that data back to us by June?
I believe that is easily accessed. B.
No, she was talking about C, looking at
C.
rate of success. I'm not even sure where C is anymore. I mean, credit attainment, is that? Oh, the number of credits attained through e-learning.
Well, that's a subset of B.
So it would be included in it? Is that
Well, the number of students who completed an online course,
that's
and then
right.
the rate of success would be a subset of B.
They attain the credit. That's two different.
Yes. Well,
Two different data.
Mm-hmm.
They could finish it and not get a credit.
We can move on this.
Let's separate, let's go with A and B,
Okay.
and I'd like C as a separate motion.
All right. So let's take C out of there. So I have a motion before you. Trustee Carton, are you still second on this motion?
A and B, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so where are we here? Okay, the Committee of the Whole direct the Director to bring a supplementary report to the Board of Trustees June 17th, 2015, based on the e-learning report outlined in the agenda, item 6.01, update on course selection process and e-learning provided May the 13th, 2015. And there's two sections to that. A, other alternate means of delivery as mentioned in the original motion dated December 11, 2014, and B, data concerning the number of students that completed an online course in each of the years since inception 2008 to end 2014. Got that motion before you, moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded Trustee Cartner. I ask you to take your votes, please. Yeah, it's there.
Okay, I see it now.
And Trustee and Trustee Garrow, in favor? Okay, that carries. Thank you very much. So there is a second motion now then you're bringing forward?
Yes, the second motion is really C, that a report by the director include the rate of success of the courses taken in e-learning.
Do I have a seconder for that? We'll get the motion on the table first. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
I might if I asked a question.
I'll second it.
Trustee Cartner, thank you. Okay, so the motion that I have before me is, I read the whole thing, I do, don't I? It's the same motion with the addition of A to the original, without A and B, to include a rate of success of courses taken in e-learning. Rate of success of courses taken in e-learning. Questions?
Trustee McAllister, are you lumping all courses together so that it's 700 courses taken and the success rate is 30%, or are you looking at 20% in math and 30% in physics and 10% in whatever?
No, I would be looking, Chair, to the aggregate number.
So we don't need to know what subjects are being asked for?
No.
Any other questions or comments?
Through you, Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee.
I think rate of success is too broad of a term, and I'd like it more defined.
Trustee Carton?
Could I make a suggestion to the mover that be credit received or credit attained that we use in the regular language of
yes
reporting on courses?
So rate of credit obtained of courses, through courses taken in e-learning?
That would be satisfactory.
Rate of credit obtained through courses. Okay, so the motion is with A, rate of credit attained through courses taken in e-learning.
No.
Trustee McDonald?
To my point, Mr. Chair, we have an accountability framework where we have decided on key results indicators of this organization and some results indicators. Those key results are 90% graduation, and then we have a results indicator about credit attainment, 16 by 16, so grade 10 and grade 11 credit attainment. If we start to one-off things, we are whittling away at what we value as far as results indicators and critical key results indicators. Again, we have, up until this point, we have not been interested in any other courses or any other course delivery. We don't hear reports or get reports on MSIP. We don't get reports on a blended class or a stat class. We don't get reports on mixed classes of 2 through 5, those types of things. I want to be cautious to the trustees that we have set parameters for our board, our administration, that we want to see results around 10 and 11 and 90% graduation. Those are very clear directions.
Okay. Trustee McPherson?
We just received a report tonight on our Native Studies, First Nations, Métis, Inuit course credits. In 2009, 2010, there was 86. In 2014, 2015, there's 1,418. So we have already, as a board, received a report from senior staff on course credits on part of our curriculum that is clearly identifiable. So I don't see the danger in asking for a report on course credits on a new and innovative way of delivering what we cannot deliver face-to-face for our students. I think it's a piece of measurement that when I get a call from a parent saying, my kid can't get this and I can only take it online, I can say to them, well, the success rate is 75% or something like that. So, just looking at this, and I don't see what the harm is in asking for a very broad measure of a success rate.
Counsel?
I understand Trustee McDonald's concern about the fact that we might be treating e-learning courses differently than other courses, but the fact is that they are different than other courses, and we are talking about a report concerning e-learning, and I think it's essential that we have some indication as to the success of this mode of delivery.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, I'm going to call the vote. The vote is on the motion that includes a rate of credit attainment through courses taken in e-learning. Good question. Yes, a good question. Sorry about that. Are we still looking at the end of June report on this? Over.
If the director feels that that is attainable, then yes.
Okay, that's June the rate, okay, A. Rate of credit attained through courses taken in e-learning to be presented at the board meeting. Committee, is it committee of the whole is going to? Board. Committee of the whole, June 17th, 2015. I should have cast your votes, please. Ready? Oh, board of trustees, sorry. And that carries with 2 opposed. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, thank you very much. I almost forgot about you back there, but thank you very much for your report. Okay, I need a motion to move the committee of the whole back into regular board. Moved by Trustee Garrell, seconded by Trustee Karkner. Cast your votes, please. That carries, I'm assuming. There's anyone not. Okay. Moving on to the next item, I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent of System Operations, Jeremy Hobbs, who's going to give us an update on the easement situation at the Cenotaph at the former North Grenville District High School. This was a motion that was brought forward, and we wanted a little more information. So I'll turn this over to you, Superintendent Hobbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to come back on this subject, and as you indicated, I'm able to provide you very little more information. We actually, as you'll recall, the original report going back to last year was to grant the municipality of North Granville an easement on the front of the existing North Granville District High School for the purposes of accommodating the Cenotaph, which has been there historically, and some space for members of the community to gather on Remembrance Day and perhaps other occasions. The history a little bit, as we set out, this was brought forward as a request from the municipality of North Grenville. It was discussed among administration last year and decided to proceed with the recommendation. Administration worked with legal to develop a formal agreement and sort of stipulate the dimensions of the easement. And at the last meeting of the Upper Canada District School Board, we brought forward the actual formal recommendation for vote. There was some discussion about whether that granting the easement would negatively impact the sale value of the North Grenville District High School property, because as you know, we expect at some point in the next couple of years to be disposing of that property when the new Kemptville Public School opens. In the last board, after the last board meeting, we agreed to go away and talk to a couple of experts and see if we could get any more information on what the impact of the easement would be, specifically around prospects for sale. So I got two opinions. So we did go back to legal. Our legal definitely agrees that the easement would place constraints on a prospective developer. So the easement is such that a prospective developer could not build obviously where the easement is, and it's a fairly significant chunk of the front yard leading up to the roadway. So there is definitely a constraint there on a prospective buyer. We also spoke to the appraiser of the property, and the appraiser actually gave us a written opinion, and maybe I'll just read to you a little bit of that opinion. The appraiser said, in order for an easement or right-of-way to impact on the market value of a property, it must impact the affected property in one of several ways, which include the following. Number one, does it affect the use and enjoyment of the subject property? Number two, does it affect the overall utility of the subject property? And three, does it affect the highest and best use of the subject property? Upon review of the data, including the brief description we provided outlining the purpose of the easement, it is my opinion, and this is the appraiser, that the easement in this case would have no bearing on any of the above concerns and accordingly no negative impact on the future saleability or list price. So the net effect here is that we have a lawyer who says, yes, it would place restrictions on a prospective developer, and the appraiser who says, but it would not have a material impact on the saleability or the sale price. So really, it boils down to, I think, in my opinion, as it did last year, is that without much visibility into how it would impact saleability or price, what's the value that we place on the goodwill of the municipality of North Grenville, and that's really purely a subjective decision. So the decision for us for administration is recognizing that the original report and motion were deferred. We just brought back the existing motion and figured we could you could debate it here and then vote on the original motion.
Through you, Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Trustee Sloan.
I'd just like to say, and I've researched the Cenotaph. I've been a trustee now. I think I'm in my 5th year. And this has come up over the last term. The Cenotaph was commissioned in 1922. It was in the old post office. It was moved to South Grenville, or North Grenville, sorry, in 1961. Apparently, they looked for any agreements between the board, my predecessor, Trustee Hodge, and they couldn't find any. I'm sure there must have been something in place for us to have placed it there, but those old records could not be found. But I would also like to say that our board staff assured the municipality back in November of 2014 that the cenotaph would be included in any easement and any future sale. And that is in a local Kempville paper from November 2014. So I'd like to honor that. Our students go there. We have 2 public schools closed. They do Remembrance Day ceremonies there. It's right in downtown Kempville. There is an alternate plan to move it to the forestry center, but it's in a perfect location. The town would like to keep it there if they could, and I am fully supportive of supporting the town of keeping it there. It's only been moved once. It was damaged. The community came up and stood behind it, and it was fixed. And it's a memory to our soldiers. And I just think it's a goodwill gesture from the board to the town of Kempville to support what we said we would do last year. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing there are, I have a motion in front of me that the Upper Canada District School Board grant the municipality of North Grenville an easement for the portion of the former North Grenville District High School property shown as part 1, 2, and 3 on reference plan 15R 11600. Do I have a mover? Moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Garrow. Any other comments or questions? I should have cast your votes, please. And that carries. Thank you so much. Thank you, Superintendent Hobbs. Report from the Committee of the Whole, public session May 13th. There were 4 presentations and 1 discussion item were shared. 1 recommendation was brought forward to the board. There was a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 423, partnerships, sponsorships, and or cooperative ventures with revisions as submitted April 22nd, 2015. Need a mover for that? Moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee McPherson. Comments or questions? Cast your votes, please. And that carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item. This is an amendment. I brought forward a notice of motion April 22nd concerning amendments to the board bylaw. The intent of the motion is to avoid duplication and to improve flow of the meetings, and that recommend that the committee of the whole be removed from the board meeting agenda, as this committee is really comprised of the same members of the board. And you'll notice tonight in any other board meeting, nothing is much different between what we do in the committee of the whole and what we do in the board. The only exception is perhaps if we can get into longer debates and longer discussions in committee of the whole. I guess what I'm saying in terms of my recommendation to do this is if we feel we're dealing with an item and we need more time to discuss it, or we don't have enough information, we certainly have the right to defer that and bring it back to another board meeting we have more information. So what I'm asking is for a motion to, do you have the motion in front of me? At the Upper Canada District School Board amend board bylaw with revision as submitted May the 13th, 2015. And the details are down below. And it's just a matter of changing in section 6.0, order of business, removal of the committee of the whole, and then 6.03 or 6.30, removing that entire section. So we'll start to see if I actually should pass the chair over to you and then I remove it. So I'm going to move the motion.
I'll second it.
Second by? Trustee Swan?
Wendy McPherson.
Oh, Wendy, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Any discussion in regards to the motion? Trustee Bill McPherson?
Did you include 7? Include 7 in your motion?
He moved it, and Trustee McPherson seconded.
You think you did?
The other trustee, McPherson.
The other trustee.
Okay. So have I got the floor?
You do, sir.
Okay. I'm a little confused here. About 8 years ago, we moved from a committee structure to a committee of the whole. The reason it's called committee of the whole is because we all sit on it, rather than having program and education and finance and planning and meeting with part of the members. The whole purpose of a committee is to make recommendations to the board. So my concern here is that we have the potential for a new item coming forward at any given meeting and being dealt with summarily before the meeting is over. So what governance model does this fall under? Because we have a committee structure, which we've changed to a governance model of committee of the whole. So how would we describe our governance model now? Because there's no municipalities that I'm aware of that doesn't either do a committee structure or function under committee of the whole. So I can understand the need to streamline, but I think we still need the distinction that what we deal with tonight in committee of the whole for discussion does not get voted on until the next regular meeting. In other words, there's a passing on. So
I'll refer to the mover.
This thought has been in my mind and in the mind of others for a while. What made me think that perhaps we should move forward with this was after we had a training session with a parliamentarian who sat down with us and walked through the parliamentary procedure of what we were doing in the board and made the suggestion that there was no need in the way we do business to have a separate committee of the whole and a board. And out of that discussion with this parliamentarian, I decided to put this forward to the board to see if it would be an option. So I wasn't basing it just on a whim. I'm basing it on the advice of the parliamentarian.
If I may share.
I have you on the speakers list, Trustee McPherson, Wendy McPherson. Is that all right?
Okay, so you'll tell me. Is it my turn?
I'll come back to you in a moment.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Trustee Donald Cram.
Through you, Madam Chair. Does the original motion include a change to 7.0? Because in the draft that I've got, there happens to be a change at 7.0 as well.
Yes, it does. Yes, 7.0. Yes.
I just thought I heard it stopped at 6.30.
No, I didn't read them all. Sorry. It's referenced in 3.0, 5.2, or 5.2, 7. Anywhere that you would see the term.
Thank you. Trustee McAllister, you're next.
I have a question to the mover, and I'm not sure whether this originates within our own bylaws or policies, or if it's in the Ed Act, but I think it's incumbent upon all trustees to attend meetings, and if 3 consecutive meetings are missed, at least it reads 3 regular consecutive meetings are missed, then sanctions are applied, serious sanctions. Where does this leave us?
Through your chair. Through your chair. I think, because we have committee of the whole and board on the same night, the same thing would apply. Because right now we're already having the board on the same evening.
Okay.
Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Thank you, Chair. One of my questions has already been answered with regards to getting our procedural bylaw to be amended to follow that wish to get rid of the committee of the whole. But with regards to Trustee McPherson's question about he doesn't know any other municipalities that would run a meeting without having the committee of the whole. I know of 2, South Glengarry and North Glengarry, don't have a committee of the whole at all. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. I think I support this. I was certainly involved in the original aspect, and the committee of the whole piece was put in as that second chance, I guess, or sober second thought potentially. But as we progress as a board, we certainly can see how there's opportunities for improvement. The opportunity for us to have any discussion around something that has been approved at committee of the whole and then at the board has simply been a housekeeping measure over the last little while. So I think it's important for us that we take away as much of the clogging up of meetings, I guess, from switching to committee and back into board, those types of things. We are a board. The reason we went to that committee structure was because we were repeating ourselves from a finance and a program standpoint. It's important that the board hears it as a whole. If there is that requirement for sober second thought, there is a process that allows trustees to bring something back that has been passed or addressed at the board level. So I think as long as we are aware of those processes that are in place, and I'm comfortable with this, I think it's going to help streamline the meetings and get rid of some of that, or help clarify, I guess, where we stand in a particular area of the meeting.
Any further discussion on that motion?
Through you, Chair?
Go ahead, Trustee Swan. Have I got the right one?
Yes, you do. I'm in favor of committee of the whole because I think it gives us a great opportunity to bring things to the board table and have a chance to have our communities come back to us before it comes back to the next board meeting where it can be voted on. So those are my thoughts, and I'm in favor of keeping it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Moved by Chair McMillan, second by Trustee Wendy McPherson, that the Upper Canada District School Board amend the board bylaws with revisions as submitted May 13th, 2015. And they're listed in our motion, and I believe you have them listed. Ready to take your vote? Go ahead. That motion passes with 2 opposed. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to need a motion to extend the meeting until 10:15. I believe we can get everything done by 10:15. Move by. Pardon me? Oh, there's Pride after that. 10:20. We'll extend again if we have to. 10:20. Moved by Trustee McAllister, second by Trustee Karkner. Cast your votes, please. And that carries. Thank you very much, everyone. Going to give a status update, even though everyone in the room was really involved. This is the status update on the selection and recruitment for Director of Education. Even though we basically started the process the moment we hired the search firm from Toronto, Prometheus, about 3 weeks ago. Today was, I guess, the formal start when we had Marilyn Guthrow, who represents Prometheus, and she came down and spent the entire day with us, and she interviewed many of the people that were in this room, the senior team. She interviewed people from an OPC representative. She interviewed some of our union leaders. And she sat down with the Board of Trustees, and she interviewed our student trustee and our future student trustee. And out of that, she is getting a good feel for what Upper Canada District School Board is all about and the type of leadership that will be required to move us forward. So we're now in the very beginning stages of the process. From there, she will go back and create a profile for us to take a look at. I think the important thing to realize or to emphasize is that the entire process finalizes with the Board of Trustees. It's the entire board who will make the decision in terms of who we hire as the next Director of Education. This is a role that I think is probably one of the most serious of all the roles that trustees undertake in their role as trustee. we're setting the direction of this board for the next few years. So it's something I know I take, and I know all of us take as a very serious job. There are timelines that would be ideal timelines. However, you know, as much as we would like to have a director in place, for example, at the beginning of the school year, getting the right person is the most important thing. And so if it takes us a little longer than that, you know, a month or two after that, the important thing is we get the best fit for all of the employees and, more importantly, our students in Upper Canada. So that's where we're at right now. I thank everyone around the table, senior team, everyone, Charlotte, for the time that you gave today to give the input. It was valuable input. I'm very proud of every person at this table. My understanding is the honesty and the openness with the full intent of getting the right person came out loud and clear. So I thank every one of you for your involvement today. And I will, as the chair of the board, will keep everyone as informed as I am in terms of where we are at every step of the way. Okay, any questions or comments on that? Thank you. Report of the Ontario Public School Board.
Mr. Chair, I have nothing to report this time. We have not met since our last meeting, and our next meeting will be at the AGM in June.
Thank you very much. Report of the student trustee, Sheila Cruz.
Thank you, Chair. So we had our final student senate meeting on April 10th. We started the morning with some team building activities. We did our family of schools discussions as well as our sharing of the family of schools discussions, and we also had some great guest speakers. So we had Mr. Peter Garrow. He talked to us about the life journey of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and a lot about the history. We also had Ray Westendorp and Terry Gardner. They talked to us about the Champions for Kids Foundation, Tell Them For Me surveys, and as well as the Speak Up grants. I think that the senators reacted very well to these guest speakers. They love them both. They left the meeting very enthusiastic about Champions for Kids. We were talking about different things we could run, even ways that we could use the Speak Up grants for Champions for Kids fundraisers. So it all tied in well together. It was a successful meeting, and thanks for everyone that made it happen.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? All right, before we go into private session, I'm going to give the director a chance to do any closing comments that you want to make.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
All right. That's off guard.
A little bit. I just wanted to say that yesterday I had the opportunity to visit the elementary schools in the Perth family. I was at North Elmsley Public School, Queen Elizabeth, the Stewart, and Maple Grove. And what I saw there was strong evidence of student learning, engagement, and innovation. At Maple Grove, I saw a beautiful outdoor play space in the forest that the kindergarten students are able to use. At the Stewart, I talked with Principal Kelly about the student voice, and particularly the student voice junior survey. At Queen Elizabeth, the principal and about 20 students were working on Lego robotics in the Learning Commons. And I spoke with Acting Principal Sue Nielsen at North Elmsley Public School about the creation of innovative learning spaces in the school. And I have to say that I was very pleased to see the principals so actively involved in creating the conditions for student learning. And I want to say that I know that this is not unique to the Perth family of schools or the elementary panel. I want to commend our principals for their leadership at this time and our staff for their commitment to student learning. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I think, you know what I want to say to all the trustees, and I also want to say it to the senior team. May and June are tough times of the year. And our role as trustees increases with budget time, end of year commitments. In this case, the selection of a director. There's an awful lot happening. And so we know how we're feeling at this point in time as a board of trustees. Senior team, probably 100 times harder for you because you're going 1,000 miles an hour, and we appreciate that. It's not an easy time. It's not easy for any of us at this board table. And I just want to say as the chair of the board that how much I appreciate each and every one of you and what you do. And, you know, I'm going to speak on behalf of the trustees right now. We've asked the trustees to come in many times and give up time to be here. And some of you traveling great distances. And you know, what I've noticed over the many years that I've been here is we can disagree, and that's good. And sometimes we get a little disagreeable, but I think that's good because that's what we're all about. But at the end of the day, we're probably one of the strongest teams that I could ever imagine in the province of Ontario. We know why we're here. And I think it's good that we disagree. I think it's good that we agree. But I just want to say as the chair of the board, I'm so proud of each and every one of you because I know you work from your heart, and I know that. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. Having said that, I need a motion to move into private session. Moved by Trustee McPherson, Trustee McDonald. Just a show of hands. Thank you very much.